You know what's possibly a little dumb is to switch to live just to get a screenshot for the tweet. Why? Oh, my lights are incorrect. Hang on. My other lights are incorrect too. Who didn't make this a smart light? There we go. That's just a fill light, all right? It wasn't going to make a huge difference. Camera's over there. This whole thing's a pain in the ass. Wait, no. Yep, there we go. Thumbnail. Doop. So, noise gates. Probably shit at the moment. Gonna play with it a little bit. Excuse me. How is everyone? By everyone, I mean just me. That's all right. We do this for my own benefit, not for yours. Oh God, how do we pop out a window? And what keeps going on over here? Logitech. I don't have any Logitech. Oh wait, my mouse. What? My mouse is having a conniption. And I don't know why. Because the screen is too far away for me to read. I swear to God. If this doesn't stop. Show chat. What is going on? I hate YouTube chat so much. I hate it with a passion. Let's bring it over here. What the hell did they do with the pop-out chat button? On the bright side, camera placement, a little bit better these days. That's good. It keeps changing DPI. I'm not doing anything though. I thought this was a RAM issue for a little while, that my mouse would sort of jank a little bit, but now I'm getting the feeling it's actually too many USB devices, which is bullshit because I don't think I've got that many connected. The question is that going through the stream? Come on. As soon as I start looking, it stops. God damn it. I don't think that sound is going through the stream. So it only drives me crazy. Good. Excellent. All right. The pop-up button for the chat appeared. That's good. Oh, that is going to drive me crazy. My mouse is almost unusable. Almost unusable. I hate YouTube so much. Come on. Zoom in. I'm blind. There we go. Oh, this is horrible. God damn it. All right. That's that sorted. Move that chat box. That is useless because of how little it lets me actually adjust things like font size. And I think we're almost there. The only thing I wanted to play with was the noise gate. Very pro, very professional. This is what you get for solo operations. Effects, effector, noise gate. Did that not pop up somewhere? There it is. All right. Noise gate? No noise gate. All right. All right. 1, 2. 1, 2. That doesn't seem to make a difference. Ah, it's this button. There we go. Now you can hear my lips. No, you can't. Unless I'm... Anyway, that doesn't seem to be the issue. I feel like recently the old wave mic has been a little less forgiving for like not being directly in front of it. Like as soon as I'm here, it drops. So I've got to stay here, which I think technically that's just how you got to use microphones. So that's what we'll try and do. I've just got to find a better mic placement and maybe even consider getting a low profile, because this has to thread between my two monitors to reach me. And then like when it's in between the monitors, I can't really move it far because it's got to be between the two monitors. But if I can get it underneath it, then I can maybe get a bit more movement. And because I can't even, like, I can't move it over here if I'm looking at this screen because I'm blind. I can't see these fucking screens unless I move. I'm not like some of you talented, sighted people that can just see shit. But anyway, that's my problem, not your problem. I don't know. I get really antsy the day before I go somewhere, and I'm off on a trip for 4 days, and that means I'm not working for the next 5 days, which means I've got what is known as leisure time, right? Something that is not nearly robust enough for most people. Anyway, what that means for today is that I'm kind of bored. I've got free time. I don't need to be in bed at any particular time. And so I thought I'd do a stream because there's been some, holy shit, has there been things popping off lately. It has been completely insane with the news that's been coming out. We've had things obviously happening in America with the guy that got killed on the subway, the homeless guy that was killed on the subway for being threatening. We've got more mass shootings in America. We've had the federal budget in Australia has been released with some less than stellar adjustments to everyday people and their need for, basic necessities like food and rent, and just generally Twitter being Twitter. I've more or less given up on Twitter being what it was 2-3 years ago, and a place where you can sort of spend time with and get to know other like-minded people while still laughing at the zoo animals that are also on Twitter making spectacles of themselves and showing their ass, as it were. But unfortunately, it seems more and more that today's Twitter is just people showing their ass. And maybe that's just me. I need to accept that and need to adjust my use to accommodate what that is at the moment. And saying all that, the biggest... I wouldn't say the biggest news, but the most interesting news to me personally, or the most interesting thing to pop off has been over the last sort of day or two is Tim Pool. Tim Pool's fascinating person, right? Like, it is the sort of... Hang on. Okay, cool, just making sure we're recording. So Tim Pool has been a fascinating person for me, and partly is because he has managed to operate in such a way where he has this defensibility veneer over himself being if not centrist himself, someone who is willing to hear out both sides and come to a logical, consistent conclusion when it comes to any of these things that we talk about online. And he's existed in this space for quite a long time, quite a long time. Anyway, I can't be bothered going into a history of Tim Pool. Basically, what it comes down to is now Tim Pool is just a grifter. Now he is just a conservative that styles himself as what was the phrasing he used? I remember I had this argument with someone who tried to claim that Tim Pool was, if not a leftist, he was nonpartisan or center of both sides and just didn't listen to any of the extremes on either side. Heterodox, I think, was the way Tim Pool described himself at one point. And the issue I have is that we don't just rely on people describing their politics in terms of what they prefer when it comes to party affiliation, right? We actually need to evaluate what they believe and how that comes out when they're having other discussions, which, particularly discussions that are influenced or impacted by politics and by the position people have in relation to how they think people should live or how society should be arranged. Those ideas are a lot more important when it comes to determining where someone is in the political spectrum, as opposed to them just saying, I am X, Y, Z. For a long time, I have never been super clear on saying I am this particular type of leftist or this particular type of socialist or this particular type of progressive. I tend to rely more on the things I believe to sort of help people figure out in their head where they think I belong, to sort of, put me in that, put me along that x-axis somewhere that makes sense to them, because we all do have different ideas of what the center is and what the left is and what right is and stuff like that. So, when you self-identify, you sort of take that nuance away from people's perception of you and you sort of hope that their understanding of left and right is the same. I think a particularly salient example of that was back, God, it was a while ago now, when I had a chat to a conservative guy, Xavier. Was it Xavier? Javier. Say it twice. Yeah. And the initial impetus for that conversation was that they wanted to have someone who was liberal talk to someone who was conservative. And I was like, okay, well, just to be clear, like, I think liberals are center and I'm a leftist. But is that what you're actually after? Because a lot of people will just consider liberals to be people on the left and conservatives to be people on the right. And once you start to actually think about leftists, leftism, socialism, those types of beliefs that are a bit more like worker-centric and a bit more human-focused, you sort of start to find out that classical liberals, like what old Dave Rubin used to consider himself, are actually people in the center. And this is where it gets more interesting, that when you actually start to think about what it means to be in the center of a discussion, particularly a political discussion, what does it mean to be in the center of debates like, should abortions be legal? All right. What is the center point there? There's no, well, have half of an abortion and have half of not an abortion. Like that's not viable, right? And it's not like people who are in favor of access to healthcare for women who are pregnant. And it's not like they're suggesting abortions should be done for fun either. So you can't even then argue, well, the center point is to only have abortions where they have, a need for an abortion, whether it's due to social factors, economic factors, health factors, right? The left position already takes into account the fact that abortions are not a desirable procedure, but they are medically necessary in many circumstances, and it should be between the person who's pregnant and their doctor. Whether or not an abortion happens shouldn't be part of the government's body of work to conduct whether or not abortions happen, right? So that one debate already, there is no space in the center that exists which doesn't default to the conservative argument, which is people shouldn't be allowed to have abortions, right? Because if you'd argue, well, we need to talk about it more, we need to get more data, we need to think about what the effects are, we need to we need to put this off, we need to delay, we need to, just sit and talk about it before we make any rash decisions, that is just arguing in favor of the status quo. And typically the status quo has been that, there are no rights for women, no rights for minorities, no rights for people whose gender expression doesn't match societal norms. That's where centrism gets you. It gets you on the right. And it pushes against the change that is advocated for by the left. That being the entire thesis of this particular episode, Jesus, God, you can only really call them episodes if you're consistent, or if they're planned, or if you put out good stuff. Anyway, the whole point of this is that today's topic is Tim Pool himself. So I alluded to earlier, he is the person who has been presented to me in the past by people who are of dubious credibility to be an example of someone who is in the center, maybe leans a little bit left. Bearing in mind that their idea of someone that's left or center basically just means that they're a conservative that doesn't openly say that gays are evil, which is a really fucking low bar. Anyway, that's where we're here. Now, Tim has been popping off. So I'm not sure how much of this we'll see on here, but one thing of curious interest I saw. So I've seen a few things lately, including, for example, so Majority Report and Tim Pool have a bit of a history with each other, and it's sort of amazing. And we might actually see this in some of these clips, actually, now I think about it. So I won't go into it too much, but anyway, let's have a look at this clip first. Lance of the Serfs, right? Now, I am aware of the Serfs. I sort of understand that they live on the left side of politics and progressivism. I don't actively engage with their content. The only reason for that is that YouTube has not served them through the algorithm to me. Maybe I should. I don't know. But from what I've heard in this interview, he seems to be, Lance anyway, he seems to be, consistent with what I would sort of argue are the correct ideas when it comes to some of the topics they're talking about. But let's go through this. 10 minutes. All right, we should be able to get this done in a solid 40 minutes.
Before the show, we were like, talk about Lance with him not here is kind of shady.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, but it is what it is. I told him he was in a cult. Like, in the after show, for those that didn't see it, I asked him, here we go. I asked him, I'll try and keep it family friendly. If you engage in adult relations with a trans woman who's male and has male body parts, are you?
Okay, this is not a clip I've seen at this point. And of course it is trans people. Of course that's the topic. Maybe I've seen a tweet about this actually. Oh, holy shit. This has always been something I've had mixed thoughts about on talking about, mostly out of respect for the fact that, people who live this experience or live the experience of being trans are ultimately, the high level relevance parties to listen to about this sort of stuff. But I'm more and more coming to the conclusion that the issue is that if we leave this up to trans people to talk about, they will just be drowned out by these people, by Tim Pool, by Steven Crowder, by Ben Shapiro, by Jordan Peterson, by all of these people who are just trying to make them seem so weird and creepy and unnormal and like that is all that's going to be out there in the ecosystem. And I'm pushing more towards the idea that we all need to actively talk about these issues as much as we can. And that is going to require a little bit of trust from people that are more directly impacted by in trans discussion, that is, trans people and the family members of trans people. So I hope that if in dealing with this, if I make any errors or if there's anything that I say that isn't accurate to someone's experience, that you treat that as a good faith attempt at my part to contribute to a discussion that is being saturated by hateful people. And my attempt to just sort of respond to that in an earnest way, in support of trans people existing and being visible. So with that context in mind, let's keep going.
You gay? He said no, and I said,
this is the
if you were to go to MGM National Harbor, and the reason why I use it as an example is, for one, it's obvious. Like I was just there last weekend, but it's like a big shopping center with like a steakhouse and restaurants and casino, and you proclaim loudly to the thousands of people that position, that engaging in adult relations with a male who is trans is not gay. Do you think any of them would agree with you? And he's like, no, none of them would. I'm like, you're in a cult. Like, you're asserting this worldview that exists only among a tiny, tiny subset of people. You are the odd person out. You are not the mainstream. You are not the average.
Well,
Wait. Sorry, I need to hear that past again because I was too busy thinking about how stupid Tim Pool is. Mostly, the thing that struck me first is and I think this is a theme we're going to see with the way Tim Pool engages with political ideas, is that he will do the reductio ad absurdum, where he will take an idea and he will push it to its absolute logical limit. In terms of logical limit, the most extreme version of that idea, and then test it at that level of excess of he'll test the extreme version of that idea to see if there's any inconsistencies, and based on any inconsistencies if you, in this case, declare in front of a restaurant that if you are, I'll have to hear the passing again, but if you are X and you engage with Y, are you gay? And you declare that to the restaurant, that is absurd. That is reducing an idea on, what is the sexual orientation of people based on the gender expression of the people involved, and then testing that as if you were going to stand up in a restaurant and ask strangers to provide their input into the nature of your relationship is ridiculous. It is not a way to actually investigate and understand the ideas at play. It's not a genuine good faith attempt to have this discussion, but Tim is a logic bro. And so if he can make it sound illogical, he will go, well, that's not logical, and therefore it's inconsistent. And I'm all about being consistent. But yeah, let's listen to this. I won't focus on the stupidity. I'll focus on the argument, and we'll go from there.
Asserting this worldview that exists only among a tiny, tiny subset of people, you are the odd person out. You are not engaging in adult relations, but it's like a big shopping center with like a steakhouse and restaurants and casino. And you proclaim loudly to the thousands of people.
Wait. Did he create even a backstory for this hypothetical?
Are you gay? He said, no. And I said, if you were to go to MGM National Harbor, and the reason why I use it as an example is, for one, it's obvious, I was just there last weekend, but it's like a big shopping center with like a steakhouse and restaurants and casino. And you proclaim loudly to the thousands of people that position, that engaging in adult relations with a male who is trans is not gay. Do you think any of them would agree with you? And he's like, no, none of them would. I'm like, you're in a cult. You're asserting this worldview that exists only among a tiny, tiny subset of people.
Now, here's the problem with talking about these videos is I don't know what he means by a male who is trans. I don't know if he is misgendering someone and they're a trans woman, or if he's accurately gendering a trans male. Let's just let him.
You are the odd person out. You are not the mainstream. You are not the average.
We'll see if we can figure it out.
Well, to be fair, the commenters were pointing this out in the members only section. When he made that statement, he was drinking Bud Light. So it's possible it got into his system, and that's why he said that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Very true. I will say, I do respect him for coming on the show. I didn't think when I saw his face up there, I was like, there's no way Lance actually accepted.
Wait, they're talking about Lance claiming Tim Pool has fallen off the fence, but this is not a clip of Lance making the argument? The point I was trying to get at was that, oh my God, Tim's a piece of shit. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the discussion here is supposed to be a male presenting person dating a female trans woman, but yeah, Tim's a fucking
going on Timcast. So full respect, full props to you, Lance, for doing that.
He tweeted something at someone, I don't remember who, and then I responded with just like, hey, come on the show, bro. And immediately he was like, hell yeah, dude, awesome.
Okay, I need to find a clip with him actually talking to Lance. I don't want to just sit here and watch the three of these fuckwits masturbate each other over how funny and crazy this left person is.
Valid information that says that my worldview is incorrect about something, please pass that on. I think there's a very apt quote here. Voltaire did not say very many wise things.
Oh, Voltaire. Oh, my God. No, okay, no. Let's try a different video. Sorry, I thought Tim Pool knew how to fucking YouTube and knew how to title his fucking videos for the content. Which, to be fair, I mean, he clickbaited me. I mean, technically that means he won, doesn't it? Right, so that's Lance, right? Children should... Oh, no. Got an anime. Wait. Did I accidentally stumble onto manga and anime discourse? I wasn't planning on doing that. That's fine, though. Conservatives need to speak the language. There's no way Lance was giving him ideas, right? Children's. What the fuck was this discussion? Freedom trucks. Jesus Christ. Okay, so these clips are not what I was expecting. Conservatives don't understand manga or
Back in
anime.
the
Let's
day,
go.
when these dudes were
Now, I just watched Akira recently at the cinema. Fantastic movie. Stands up. Fantastic soundtrack. Animation. Silky smooth. I'm not sure there was anything conservative in that movie. In fact, the background of Akira is a protest of the citizens as they protest tax hikes by corrupt politicians, which working people rising up to sort of, crush the bourgeois. Let's see.
were creating language to convey an idea, they drew a picture of three women and then nudged their buddy, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you get it? Yeah. But now it's like in their language.
And then it became a meme, which is the word for gene.
I want to fact check that. I want to make sure that.
Well, I would believe it. I do believe it, as a matter of fact, even if you fact check it and it's wrong. But
Wait, that's not Lance.
Pictures and words are just ways of communicating. Okay.
Wait.
Did Temple just fact check that meme is based on the word gene when it was coined? Oh my God.
Basic Chinese. The character showing two women together means argument, so it's two. The character, oh wow, the showing three women actually meant infidelity.
Wait, no, I wasn't
That's
paying
crazy.
attention.
That's hot.
Yeah, oh wow, no.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's 1, 2, and 3 on top, and it means adultery.
He kept this in the clip. It is an 11-minute clip, and the first 48 seconds are Tim on his phone.
That's so crazy. So like they're communicating through pictures, you know?
Pictures as they were turning into letters. Because the more you refine, the more people are literate. Like if somebody can't draw, they can't.
Wait, they were talking about Chinese characters being pictographic in nature? Tim didn't understand Chinese as a pictographic language?
When these dudes were creating language to convey an idea, they drew a picture of three women and then nudged their buddy, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you get it? Yeah. But now it's like in their language.
And then it became a meme, which is the word for gene.
I want to fact check that. I want to make sure that.
Well,
I should pre-watch these videos. Sorry, he fact-checked the word meme, but then he comes back with an answer about three women meaning adultery?
I would believe it. I do believe it, as a matter of fact, even if you fact check it and it's wrong. But, I mean, pictures and words are just ways of communicating.
Yes.
Okay.
Wait.
What is going on?
Basic Chinese. The character showing two women together means argument, so it's two. The character, oh wow, the showing three women actually meant infidelity.
He was looking up the etymology of the word meme, and he comes back with this.
That's crazy.
That's hot.
Yeah. Oh wow, no.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's 1, 2, and 3 on top, and it means adultery. That's so crazy. So like they're communicating.
What the fuck is happening?
Pictures, you know.
Pictures as they were turning into letters. Because the more you refine, the more people are literate. Like if somebody can't draw, they can't make a comic telling a story about three women arguing. But if I draw the woman symbol 3 times, let's say. But anyway, all this is to say that pictures existed, and maybe that's why manga is so popular in like Asian countries, because they understand the value of pictures as a tool of storytelling, and maybe they respect it more than say.
Wait, who is this? Okay, clearly Lance from the Surf was on a long time ago, because this is not it. But like, what the fuck? Asian cultures understand fucking pictures because of their writing. That's why they like manga. Like, I'm a fucking weeb, but I would never make that fucking leap. Like, holy shit. G Prime 85. God, is this a safe search? Award-winning cartoonist. All right. Right. Wait, is this the guy that does the fucking conservative cartooning? He is. Oh my god, this is the guy that makes these dipshit cartoons. All right. Okay, I don't like either of these people. Like human life is more valuable. Like just because someone's stealing doesn't mean you get to execute them. But hey, what do I know? I'm just an Australian without stand your ground laws and a fucking AKs in every house.
The West. Whereas, you know what? Even Protestants would say that paintings were like sacrilegious and stuff. They didn't want paintings and religious icons in their churches.
Did Matt Walsh say it was demonic?
Right, so Protestants actually, how am I getting sucked back into atheist content? So Protestants don't actually believe paintings are sacrilegious. They believe depictions of the saints and Mary are sacrilegious because they were used as iconography for what they considered worship in the Catholic Church, and Protestants protesting the Catholic Church took issue with the iconography of the Catholic Church. Funny thing is, the Renaissance existed. A lot of Christian shit being painted back then.
He said anime was demonic. I'm sure he had his reasons because like a lot of anime that he probably saw was like really spicy probably.
But that's like saying movies are demonic because of OnlyFans. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Cartoon.
Yeah, movies. Totally. OnlyFans can actually trace its roots back to Hollywood cinema.
It's if somebody's going to use a video camera to make something really nasty and awful,
let's get rid of all video cameras.
Yeah, that's you know they're I'm sure Matt would argue there's great movies. The issue is Matt doesn't know anime or manga.
Yeah, we can introduce him to some good ones. You know,
I think.
Oh, what do you think of good ones? Come
really like Attack on Titan.
Ghost in the Shell.
Ghost in the Shell.
Okay. What's funny is that Attack on Titan really blurs the lines between whether or not a fascist state is good or bad based on the need or the threat to the people in a nation. The whole premise at the moment sort of is a fulcrum where is it worth it to be a fascist dictator and destroy your enemies for the safety of the people you love, or is that a little bit too far? That's the question that Attack on Titan is seeking to answer. And frankly, the last episode, which comes out in a couple of months, I think September this year, however the last episode chooses to wrap up that very difficult question, will determine whether or not Matt Welsh will actually like that particular anime. So that's funny. God, that's funny. Protestant opposite to a contestant. Contestant. Protestant contestant.
Shell, especially.
Maybe.
But I don't know. He might not like
It
that.
has booties in it.
I can't think of a clever way to wrap that one up.
And I'm sorry.
Well, no, Ghost in the
Maybe he
Shell is
would've
very
watched that.
transhumanist.
But it's cool.
Cowboy Bebop's amazing.
Cowboy Bebop.
He's right. Timple's right. Like, you can't say Ghost in the Shell is good because Ghost in the Shell asks the question of at what point do people stop being human? And it's very closely sort of suggesting that it's the ghost, it's the center that is you, and it doesn't matter what changes to the body are made, you remain you as long as you can hear the whisper of the ghost inside you. So, yeah, transhumanist, and I sort of feel like he got sort of a bit concerned at the trans word at the start of that, even though it was transhumanism.
Bebop's the bomb. But yeah, there's
Cowboy Bebop's amazing.
Cowboy Bebop's the bomb.
If Cowboy Bebop, sorry Amanda, if you're still here, I'm sorry what I'm about to say, but if Cowboy Bebop is still your measure of what a good anime is, you are stuck in the mid 2000s, and you desperately need to let go of the past. Cowboy Bebop happened. It's been done for a long time. Let it go. Right, there's better stuff out there. There's more interesting stuff out there. It was probably the best of the anime that ran with an episodic week by week formula. So the whole idea of a villain of the week or a antagonist of the week with short scenes woven throughout the entire series that sort of told the larger story of the main characters. But still, it was like each week was this is the villain, and anime's become like pretty much everything else out there a lot more sophisticated in the stories they tell, because with things like streaming and the fact that people are more likely to binge watch things, they've become much more complex woven together tales. And I think that you can say you enjoy Cowboy Bebop, but if you start your conversation of what anime should people watch, and it's Cowboy Bebop in the year of our Lord 2023, you are asking them to watch something that is out of date, and you need to stop, right? You need to stop.
But yeah, there's
it got canceled because it was too violent. Is that what it was?
You know what he would like? Cowboy Bebop? No, it just ran out, I think, of...
I was reading about it. I think what happened was, at the time in Japan, they were concerned about the extreme violence, shooting each other and stuff like that. Oh. And so they decided to just do 2 seasons or whatever.
Did you ever see Jinro?
No. What are they talking about? What are they talking about? What is happening? Okay, I had this impression of Tim Pool that he was an idiot, but that he was like not. I can't say the slur. Like, I thought he was an idiot because he believed the wrong things, not an idiot because he didn't know things. If you get the meaning, right? Like, he knows things, but he believes the wrong outcomes. No, I'm not even going to look it up. I don't care. Like, Cowboy Bebop, it literally finished the story. It was 26 episodes, and the story was done. That's why it finished. If he thinks that in the year 2000 that anime was being cancelled for the violence...
Oh my gosh, you got to see it. It was based on, loosely, there was a student...
No,
what's he talking about?
What happened was, at the time in Japan, they were concerned about the extreme violence, shooting each other and stuff like that. Oh. And so they decided to just do 2 seasons or whatever.
Did you ever see Jinro?
No.
Oh my gosh, you got to see it. It was based on, loosely, there was a student protest in Japan in the 60s, I think. It was like the students were taking over and like having riots. And it's about like a dystopian future where the only thing that can stop the constant riots is like kind of a fascist police force where they put on armor. I know you've seen the image, like it looks like the...
Okay. I have seen the image. I haven't seen the show, but I know what he's talking about. And from what I remember seeing, it didn't look great. Fuck, how did I get on anime? Jinro. The Wolf Brigade. Just out of curiosity, because he's describing what it was based on. Based on a manga. Alternate history. Come on, give me more information. Third film. Oh, Jesus. What is the theme? Loss and despair. Okay, I can't be bothered doing any more research than that.
What's it called?
Jinro, Jinroh. But it's about a police officer who has PTSD after shooting a civilian who he thinks was...
Oh, right. Definitely have seen this before.
Yeah, that movie,
it's like Fallout.
It's so relevant to today with Antifa and all that stuff. I think you should definitely prioritize watching it. But that's something I would show to Matt, and it's like, dude, this movie means something. It's great, and it's not just the whole...
Note.
Death Note's awesome.
But, like, the messages conveyed... And
is he just saying shit? Like, again, okay, Death Note, I know. And again, Death Note, like, the main character's literally the fucking villain because he decides that, you know what, if someone has committed a crime, they deserve to die. That's the story of Death Note. Light Yagami decides that he will fix society by killing anyone who has committed crimes to make society better. Again, fascism. Light Yagami is a fascist who believes that with the power of the Death Note, he can make society better by deciding who lives and who dies. And Tim Pool's like, anime of the year, ignoring the fact Light Yagami's the villain.
And challenged in his ideas.
Yeah.
Death Note isn't just a story about a psychopath and a detective. It's a story about how to make a country better and the ramifications of killing those you deem to be unfit for society.
What if I had this tool? What would I do with it?
So for those that aren't familiar, in Death Note, there's Reapers, Grim Reapers, they call them, in Japan, they're called Shinigami, have notebooks where they write your name down,
Shinigami.
You die. They can write how you die, and then they absorb your life force and they live forever or whatever. So a human teenager gets a hold of the book, and he is an authoritarian... I don't know what you'd call him. I think you'd call him probably fascistic.
Quite a tyrant, yeah. But he starts out with good intentions.
But everybody does.
Yeah.
And so what he does is he starts killing criminals he sees on TV. Then there's a detective who's trying to stop him. The detective's it's almost like utilitarianism versus deontological morality. And that's why I think it's fascinating. Plus, it's just a great show.
So, deontological, right there. And I've got this in my mind because I was watching Majority Report earlier, sort of dunk on Tim for his deontological versus utilitarian discussion with Sam Cedar 6 years ago. If you listen to people, particularly people in the political sphere, talk about ideas and talk about their beliefs, and they need to use technical terms and they need to use super specific language like this when they're describing simple ideas like whether or not it's right to use violence to make a society safer, I think that's a red flag that they actually don't know shit about what they're talking about, because one of the best ways to determine whether someone is proficient or knowledgeable in an area is how simply they can explain these ideas to an audience. Now, Tim doesn't seem to be able to break down deontological into more approachable, simple terms. Suggests to me that he doesn't fully understand how it interacts with the things he's talking about, and he is just trying to sound smart as opposed to be smart. But yeah, come on, keep cooking.
Yeah, it's just a cool mystery.
The question of
who's going to catch who.
Yeah, but the moral question within the show is: should you kill people accused of wrongdoing to better society?
Tim, oh my God, what is he going to say? What is he going to say? I know what Tim's been saying recently about whether or not you should kill people who might be a danger in society. What's he going to say now? Oh, when was this interview? When was this interview?
We deserve it.
But then how do you know if they deserve it?
Yeah.
This is the thing.
Even if they deserve it, should you still kill them?
That's one thing I think they didn't explore properly in Death Note.
No, you shouldn't kill someone, even if they deserve it. Easy. No, you should stop them. You shouldn't kill them. Fucking bam. Deontological.
He would see people on TV and kill them. And it's like, bro, they could be innocent.
And then he starts killing people that are just coming after him.
Yep.
And then it goes more into that gray area. And now he's just killing people just because.
He views him.
Killing prisoners. So early on in Death Note, he starts killing prisoners that he sees their names reported on television. That's not the gray area to this guy. The gray area is when he goes further than that, as if it's okay to kill prisoners. That's amazing. Fuck, I love America.
Himself as a god of the new world.
Yeah.
And now people are trying to stop him, so he's the only righteous one. He has to stop them. It's brilliant.
So it's genius, but I'm assuming Walsh is coming at this because he hasn't seen something like Death Note before, but
they think they're the main characters. They think that the conservative ideas of punitive justice, stand your ground, the poor people don't deserve to live, poor people don't deserve food. They think that is what's being reflected in Death Note's themes and ideology. That is amazing. This is why people say conservatives don't know how to read media. They don't understand media. They don't know how to come to grips with a text that's in front of them. They look at it and it can show them that fascistic beliefs on justice are bad, and they don't see themselves in it because they don't believe it's bad. Despite the fact Tim Pool has been on the fucking timeline on Twitter saying that it is justified that, I've forgotten the guy's name, on the subway, it was justified for him to be choked to death over 15 minutes because he was a danger because of his behavior. And yet he wants to look at Death Note and praise it as if he's learned anything from Death Note is just holy shit. Holy shit. Oh.
You can't say anime's bad. You can't say cartoons and comics are bad or games because, again, you're going to lose the next generation. They're going to say, oh, who are the only adults talking about these things as if they're, cool.
But I suppose his idea is if you separate kids from this stuff, they'll never ask about it at all.
And they wonder why they're losing the culture war.
Because they're not making culture.
You're not making something like, I just will play a game because it's cool. And if it has a message, fine.
So who did Matt Walsh did Johnny the Walrus, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's great that he did. But let's be real. No 9-year-old.
Wait, isn't Johnny the Walrus that trans species book, right? About the kid that thinks he's a walrus. And so the mother takes him to be medically transitioned to being a walrus. And Tim Pool thinks that's great. Well, who thinks this guy's a fucking centrist? When was he ever a centrist? When he's sitting here going, Matt Walsh, I I wish he liked anime, but whoa, his kid's book on the trans problem was fucking great. Amazing.
Is going, whoa, Johnny the Walrus.
I love Johnny the Walrus, yeah.
Kids are going, I want to be Spider-Man because they watch these.
Because it's cool.
When I was a kid, don't tell me the psychology of it. I don't know why. X-Men was awesome. The idea of being a superhero was so cool. The idea that
I gotta love it. X-Men, the seminal series about minorities being abused by those in power and their desperate struggle for independence and acceptance through the greater community. Oh my God, this is my favorite video of Tim Pool. Oh, no one's looked at this. How is not fucking hell? He hasn't understood anything he's watched. Tim Pool must be around my age. I don't know how old he is, but he must be in the ballpark if he grew up watching X-Men. And like, he just saw that. He saw the fact that mutants were being completely abused by society just for being different. And literally, like what, 1 or 2 sentences ago, he's praising Matt Walsh for making a book about how trans kids are creepy, disgusting, and they shouldn't be accepted because that's butchery. And then he turns around and says that, hey, the X-Men was really cool, had all these people who had these really different, forms of expression, and their bodies were all, unique and, didn't fit the stereotype of what the normal populace thought was acceptable. That was amazing. Oh my God. Can someone sit down with Tim Pool and just sort of point this out to him? Can someone go to Tim Pool and say, what did you think X-Men was about? If you can say you liked X-Men and you say you liked Matt Walsh's children's book that is really just for the parents so they can get off on being anti-trans.
you have this power and you want to save the world and you have these challenges. That was just so cool. You want to be a superhero. Batman, Superman, they never killed no matter what. And then you had these stories that were written that explored what if they had to, what if they didn't, and you end up with the story arc. I forgot which one it is, but maybe where Superman kills the Joker and then becomes
Injustice. Shout out to my man Mike Miller. Dude,
Injustice is so good. And then who was it? Damian, Bruce Wayne's son, joins. He's from the League of Assassins, so he's like, we should kill these people, because like.
This was manga and anime, right? This was not meant to be about American shit. One Piece outselling Batman, by the way.
Superman's basically, if you had just killed the Joker, how many people would be alive today?
Yeah.
And so he goes dark. Which story arc was it? It was that he poisoned Superman and Superman, it was like a nuclear bomb goes off, or he kills Lois or something like that.
I thought he killed Lois. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Jerky gas.
I think
jerky gas. He used jerky gas, made Superman kill Lois Lane.
Versions. One is it could be the both. I'm not sure. But he drugged Superman. Superman goes on a rampage and kills Lois, who's pregnant with his son.
Yeah.
And that sets him off. And then he basically creates, what is it, the Justice Lords.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like these
so
things
bored.
are fantastic and they explore.
That sigh, he's just like, fucking hell. What am I doing here? I want to go and draw a racist cartoon.
Or these ideas. So I'm a kid and I'm seeing the philosophy, the pros and cons of these different moral ideas laid before me. Then we got in the early 90s.
There's no pros and cons. There's no pros and cons. It's always bad. Whoever is the one that is, we should kill people to save people, it's always wrong. They're always the villains. Superman is the villain in Injustice. Light Yagami is the villain in fucking Death Note. The shows aren't showing the pros and cons. The shows are criticizing having an unwavering sense of justice that demands blood, right, instead of restorative justice. Like, it is... Oh my God! Please get to anime or manga.
The first time, I suppose, not necessarily the first time, but in the Batman animated series with Mr. Freeze.
Oh God, Batman!
That's a great one. Yeah.
The motivations of the villain was
totally understandable.
Sympathetic. So dark. For those that don't know, this was originally.
I believe that they can sympathize with the villains. Which I'm joking. I'm joking. A good villain is someone that is generally sympathetic, but then chooses to do the wrong thing as a result of that.
Mr. Freeze was a one-dimensional comic book villain. I'm going to freeze the world. Yeah. And then in the Batman animated series, they made it so that he was committing these crimes because he needed resources to save his dying wife.
Yeah.
And it's just masterpiece.
Healthcare. Am I right? Didn't have access to healthcare, so.
Yeah. And then Batman's like, I have to stop him. He's a bad guy. But he's like, I just want to save my wife.
Yes.
Damn, dude.
That's
It's
good
so
storytelling.
sad.
And as a younger person, I just enjoyed the show and I didn't know why. In fact, all right.
I feel
if
like they
can
still don't know
toot
why.
my own horn just a little bit here with Gooseberry Pie, for example.
It's not on camera because people watch him.
Hands are here. But no, not to say something. All right. So I had the opportunity to show Gooseberry Pie to some kids in a school, let's say. But it, the trans stuff, and they're going to schools and drag queen story hour and stuff. I was tempted to like brag about, oh, I read this.
I was joking, and then immediately he goes to trans people. Oh my god. We started and we ended with trans people. Congratulations, trans.
But then I was thinking, no, it would be weird for me to brag that I got to read to some kids, but they loved this book just because it was fun. They loved the pictures. They were going bananas, man. I'm telling you. All right, so I was there, I'm reading, and I got up at, the teacher has this thing where there's a camera above a sheet of paper where you can draw and it's projected on the wall. And they were saying, oh, draw strudel, draw this, draw that, draw a fire truck. And I'm drawing a fire truck really badly, and they are losing. Can I curse? I don't want to curse. They were losing it laughing. They were having the best time. And just because an adult came and took the time to draw and have fun with them, and it's like, okay, now you guys draw. Show me your drawings. And my God, I have a pile in my house. I got to show this off sometime. They all drew like fan art of Gooseberry Pie because their teacher took the time to read it to them over a course of a week, and they just like the book.
I do gotta say, I gotta call you out, man. It's clearly a strawberry. It's I don't know what you're trying to. Well, here.
that's the real spoiler of the story. Is what is a gooseberry? Does it even exist? Oh. It's actually a cake, not a pie. So there's deception everywhere. I'm deceiving everybody with this book. But yeah, I'm told that they just like the book because it's fun to read. Now,
and you need to give kids play.
And teenagers.
Right. No,
that's why
sure.
video games are just fun. And then maybe if you're smart, you do your storytelling well, you can sneak in your little morals and all that stuff.
What do we see with the, tiger babies and wolf babies? They play fight.
Yes.
They roll around and they're not
What the hell?
It's what they do. Humans are no different. We play these video games. It's play fighting. We don't actually want to go hurt anybody.
No.
And so
what are they talking about? What are they talking about? Okay, games famously never have a story that has some sort of moral imperative at the linchpin of it. Final Fantasy VII, famously a fun story that doesn't have anything to say about environmental distress, the destruction of natural resources leading to the destruction of the planet, the corporatization of the world's energy sources to, basically lead us to destruction. Doesn't say anything about that. No. Back then, games were just fun. Not like they are now, where if you're smart, maybe you'll put in something subtle. Fucking hell. And that guy's a fucking, comic artist.
If they had footage of us yelling at people online when we lost matches.
Oh, man. I mean, I never did that.
But play fighting...
Oh, right.
We're really acting out our aggression on each other in a safe way. Like you son of a.
And they want.
He's thinking the N word. There's no way that the guy that wrote those. Do I have his Twitter up still? Those political cartoons that this guy's written. There's no way he didn't use slurs on lobbies, and he's just itching. Like he just wants to hint at it so people know that he was cool once. Oh my god.
Want to get rid of that? They want everyone to be a soy boy.
Even Overwatch, which was one of my favorite games, they're now recording all the matches, like your voice. They do voice to text or something. So I can't even call people names in the game anymore.
What names? What names? What names do you want to call people? What name? Whoops, wrong button. What names does he want to call people on Overwatch that would get him banned? Like, fucking hell. Oh, that's... What names? Just say it. Just say it. You're on Tim Pool's all about free speech. So surely he could just say exactly what he's talking about. But he hints at it. He has to whistle it. He has to dog whistle it. He can't just come out and say it, because if he says it outright, it'll sound ridiculous. But if he doesn't say what names he wants to call children in Overwatch, oh my god. Oh my god. Cool math games website. That sounds interesting. Is it anything like Baldi's Basics and it's not actually about math, or is it Is it not? Okay. I've got to find the Young Turks one. I thought this was recent because it was like popping up everywhere. This is 1 month ago. Where are the videos for this interview? Tim Pool and Lance. And by the way, 4 minutes of manga and anime discussion in an 11-minute video, and he names it manga and anime. Fucking hell. Okay. I'm going to be debated again. What's this one about?
Even my
Conservatives need to speak the language of the youth to win them. Grooming children. Sounds like they're discussing how to groom children to me.
I like this book a lot.
All right, so we have... No, this is not... Oh, God, it's been too long. We misclicked here. All right. He's memeing here. Tim Pool is memeing for us. The power of God in anime ends cycles of abuse. Now, that's got to be talking about One Piece, right? Because One Piece is the anime that will end any cycle of abuse.
There's a quote that I like to... It reminded me what you just told me, is the pain ends with me. There's like... There's people who have a lot of bitterness in their...
Okay. If this guy is an anime fan, and the topic, the introducing sentence is the idea that the pain ends with me, he is clearly going to talk about the One Piece Fishman arc, where the fishmen who had been enslaved for centuries finally find freedom and are no longer openly oppressed. They are still marginally oppressed, and there are still like hidden slave trades that occur with fishmen, but openly they're more accepted, right? And there are violent revolutionaries in the fishermen people who decide that the hate will end with me. And despite the fact that they can't forgive the humans who enslaved them, they are determined not to pass that hatred on to the children, and so that they can hope that there is a future where fishermen and humans can live together. That is what he's going to talk about if he's going to discuss anime and the hate ends with me.
Their lives or whatever, because people were mean to them or they were bullied or even abused or something. And they have the option in their adulthood, let's say they were hit as a kid or something. Instead of sort of just taking it and holding it and never passing it on, the psychic pain is so much that they have to pass it on.
Pain. He's a fucking nerd.
That it feels at the time like it's gonna be a relief or something. But what you end up doing is passing it to the next generation. So there's this generational, let's say alcoholism or something. If someone's father was an alcoholic or they were abused in other ways, you have, it takes like superhuman discipline and self-control, and to say like, I'm going to end that cycle that has been passed on. Like if someone's dad was beaten when he was a kid, and that I'm just using extreme examples. Right. So there's examples of somebody who has like a psychic wound that they received when they were a kid. It's not their fault that they had it.
Yeah.
But
did Tim say that's what Naruto is? I didn't catch what he said. I just heard, and maybe I'm just because I'm waiting for the anime part.
They can or cannot. They might not pass it on. I would use an extreme example of, people talk about the grooming things, and that's why the drag kid story hour freaks out so many people. I want to say this with sensitivity because I don't know if it's true. They say a lot of people.
Okay, that's got to be like the key to conservative, like punditry. Now, I don't know if what I'm about to say is true, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Who are in the LGBT rainbow stuff were hurt as kids.
Yeah.
And so.
Okay, I'm laughing because it's just ridiculous. Like, partly because it sort of occurred to me as like I was unpausing it, like this man here looking like this is about to talk about like the LGBT experience, and like he is fully like cis het coded, and in the worst possible ways. And I could say that because I'm cis het coded too. So fucking bring it on.
You guys being around kids freaks me out, because what if you're psychic wound is saying, I want to pass it on.
Well, it is.
But the
A lot of it
best
is.
way, like, it's not your fault that you were hurt as a kid, I want to tell them, but like, just don't let yourself be in a setting where you can pass it on.
But
if you're gay, don't be near people, right? Like, I say this in love and respect because I'm concerned for you. But if you are gay, my assumption is you were hurt, and that hurt will be passed on to children. So if you could just stay away from the children, like that's the argument. That's the point of this 10-minute clip. Did you know that there's no such thing as a straight person who is also cis, who is also abused, right? Despite the fact that the numbers of children that are abused by family members is so insanely massive, particularly if you start looking at abuse in things like the church, that, what is it, like 1 in every 3 women are abused by the time they're 20 or something? Like, really significant number that far exceeds any number of, the reported people who report themselves to be LGBTQ. Like, if you're going to say that trauma is something that will disqualify you from being around children, you're disqualifying everybody, because everybody has some level of trauma. Like, it is actually insane to try and link trauma exclusively to this group of people who are a minority just to ostracize them from society and from participation in society. That is actually insane and inconsistent, and Tim does not point out inconsistencies when he agrees with them.
So think about the problem we're facing right now with, conservatives saying anime and cartoons are demonic or bad. They're literally saying a positive masculine influence for my child is a bad thing they shouldn't have. So then what's the alternative? The chaos of drag queen story hour?
The kids will find entertainment somewhere.
And it's wolf cubs play fight.
Yeah.
Imagine if you were saying like, no.
What's his obsession with fucking wolf cubs? Is he going through his wolf cub phase, like where he thinks everything's a fucking wolf cub? Like he in his head he's thinking alpha wolf, right? So because I always talk about One Piece, right? One of the most loved characters in One Piece is Bon Clay, Mr. 2, and he is 100% queer-coded. Not even just coded, like explicitly. Look, this is the response. This is the friendship and the closeness between him and the main character. So if they're sitting here trying to say that, like, hey, we need to make sure that anime is accepted, I'm all for it, because turns out if you get people into anime, one of the biggest shows that's going to be staring at them in the face, that's going to be they're going to be pressured to, well, not pressured, but they're going to be have a lot of influencers saying, hey, you should watch this, it's really good. They're going to end up seeing some of the best queer representation characters in anime. No, the best. In anime, these are the best characters in terms of representing the queer community. One of the other characters, Ivankov here, like he is based off Frankenfurter, right? Is that Little Shop of Horrors? Whatever the musical is. Like, this is one of the most powerful characters in the universe. When I say universe, I mean the One Piece universe. Like, in the story of One Piece, he is like the second in command of the Revolutionary Army, who is fighting against the government's monopoly on violence and the government's abuse of power, where they're keeping people oppressed at the whim of the upper class celestial dragons who treat themselves as gods and treat everyone else as nothing. This is a character who literally has a speech in One Piece. He talks about the fact that gender is meaningless, be who you want to be, and his power is to turn people into whatever gender they want to be. He has an entire group of people. These are the people that follow him. I didn't want to upload. No, that'll do. But no, that's a crap quality. But all these people here are people that follow him, and they express the gender they want to express, and that is completely normal in One Piece. And when I'm giving you all of these examples of how they're representing these types of people, yes, Rokuhori Pishiso, my bad. I knew it was wrong when it came out of my head, because that one was about flower plants and pot plants and stuff. But the thing I need to impress upon you in One Piece with the way these characters are represented, right, is when Ivankov is in the story, when Bon Clay is in the story, at no point is the story about, hey, they're gay or they're trans, let's have a story arc about that. Their story is, hey, Bon Clay, Mr. 2, is in jail and he loves Luffy and Luffy loves him. Like, they're close friends because they met back in an earlier story, even though they were enemies, and now they're friends and now they're trying to escape this prison. Ivankov, his story is not, hey, I'm a trans man, let's talk about it. It is, I am the number 2 of the Revolutionary Army, and turns out, story contrivances I won't spoil necessarily, I'm going to help Luffy do this thing. They are completely normal characters that express themselves as part of the LGBTQ community, and it is fantastic. And I love when I see these Muppets talk about anime as if it is some sort of bastion from the West that isn't buying into woke culture, because it betrays the fact that they are just stupid, right? They're just idiots. They don't understand what they're watching. They don't understand stories. They don't understand themes. They just see flashy lights and think this is cool. They just see, oh, there's a fight scene, right? Goku did a spirit bomb. Wow, flashy lights. But they don't actually see the story that's being told or the ideas that the author has. So much, like, anime is not perfect, right? Anime is not, in any sense of the word, progressive to the point where it is any more progressive than the average American TV show or British TV show or Australian TV show, right? But what it is in its own way, in their own cultural expression, Japanese people have been dealing with progressive movements in their own context, in their own setting. Really good examples of this at the moment are things like, there is a series at the moment called Oshino Koi, which is based around, well, the first episode is based around an idol in Japan. She is pregnant and she goes to a country town where she is less likely to be recognized to give birth to the twins, because if she gives birth to the twins, she gets harassed and stalked and abused by her fans, because in Japan in particular, you know, an idol in Japan, particularly when they're very popular, their fans literally idolize them. And so they have this parasocial relationship where if they get any inkling that there's a romance going on between an idol and someone that's not them, they get very jealous, very possessive, and it can get very dangerous very quickly. It's a toxic industry for women in that sense, because sort of their fans believe they've got some sort of possession over them individually. Horrible, horrible situation to be in. There's a whole series, a whole anime at the moment based on a manga, Oshino Koi, that deals with criticizing that culture. This is coming from Japan, where 10, 20 years ago, when you see women in anime, they're typically only presented as objects of desire. And now we've got an anime that is criticizing a social norm that only seeks to use women as objects for their desire and doesn't think of them as people in their own right. That is a progressive movement in anime as well. There is Hell's Paradise, another one, flashy combat. I bet these guys would look at it and think, that's fantastic, this is great, we should get people watching this. One of the main characters, a woman who's an executioner who has doubts about her ability to be an executioner because everyone around her is saying, hey, you're a woman, maybe this job isn't for you, but she's determined to get through it. She's determined to prove them wrong. That sounds like woke nonsense to me. Like, if you had that in a Western show or a Western movie and it was about a woman who was trying to be a knight in medieval Europe, you would have all these fucking dickheads posting their videos saying, well, actually, there were no knights back in medieval Europe. They were all men, because a woman wouldn't be able to lift up the armor or stand up or do anything. So it's just unrealistic and I don't believe it and I can't, I'm just losing myself in a story because it's just impossible to believe. But no, in Japan now we have anime that are exploring the idea that women can do things they couldn't do in the past. This is why these idiots are still talking about Death Note, Cowboy Bebop, stuff that is older, because if they watch the newer stuff, they might find themselves going, holy shit, actually, this is woke, if we can manage to understand what we're looking at instead of just the flashy lights.
No, you shouldn't be allowed to be inspired by these stories of masculinity and strength.
Masculinity and strength. Reminder, One Piece, queer characters. Hell's Paradise, currently airing anime, has literally a woman as an executioner trying to learn how to cut people's head off in one stroke. All the fucking isekais with effeminate male characters who look like supermodels. Like, the only things he can be thinking about when he thinks about masculine anime characters in the current day is Baki, Kengan Ashura, the other one on Netflix, maybe Record of Ragnarok. But come on, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, that's, again, we go back to anime that's gay. JoJo's Bizarre, come on, Jesus. I hate conservative. This has happened on Twitter recently. I hate people on the right trying to co-opt anime as if it is anti-woke, because it is not. And holy shit, it's an anime stream.
The story of Naruto is whenever he confronts a villain, he tries not to kill them. He tries to turn them, to convince them, and then he's successful in many regards. The same thing is true for Dragon Ball Z. Yeah. Dragon Ball Z, like, almost all the villains somehow become good guys. Like, even Frieza has an arc where he teams up with them.
He doesn't understand anything. He doesn't understand. Gary, we were trying to discuss Tim Pool presenting himself as a centrist when he was talking to a leftist Lance from the Surfs. I failed to find that video on his YouTube channel and got distracted by titles that had the word anime in it. Tim Pool has just said almost all the villains in Dragon Ball become good guys in the end. Literally one. No, sorry, 3. Because 16 was always good. 17 and 18 become good guys, and Vegeta becomes a good guy. Kid Buu doesn't. Majin Buu does, but I believe Majin Buu was the leftovers after all the evil turned into Kid Buu. So I don't think he counts. Cell never does. Frieza never does. What are the other major enemies? The Ginyu Force never does. Raditz never does. Nappa never does. I guess technically you could argue Broly does in Super, but he didn't in Z. So what else is in Z? There's Frieza. So there's the Saiyan Saga, the Namek Saga, the Cell Saga, the Buu Saga. So only Vegeta and 18 and 17 become good guys. Cell doesn't. Frieza, God, they don't know what the fuck they're on about.
It's amazing.
It's funny.
Yeah, I mean, with Dragon Ball Z, they convert all their enemies. Krillin was a rival to Goku, then they're best friends.
That's not an enemy. Krillin was never an enemy. They were children together. They met at a martial arts tournament, a friendly martial arts tournament. Krillin wasn't trying to kill Goku or kidnap Chi-Chi or anything. He was just a fucking... Oh my God.
Vegeta tries to destroy the Earth and then literally becomes the second greatest hero. I love how they do that. If you're saying these stories of, like, Dragon Ball Z, let's talk about...
God, talk about One Piece, Tim. I'd fucking dare you to talk about One Piece. Like, the actual literal anime where all the villains, every fucking villain in One Piece, okay, not every, I'm hyperbolizing here a little bit, but the vast majority of villains are introduced as villains, as antagonists. Well, this is the thing, right? One Piece, I'm getting distracted. This is not relevant to the video, so I'll be very quick. But One Piece actually is very clever in the fact that villains often aren't just evil villains, right? They're generally more accurately described as people with a different goal than the Straw Hats. And that brings them into conflict, which means that when they come across a character again later in the series, there's not an inherent, like, good versus evil dynamic between Straw Hats and previous villains. And they might be together, and they might be in a context where actually it turns out we have the same goal and we will work together and we will be on the same side in this. It's amazing. Oh, Tim Pool. Maybe Tim can become a leftist if we get him to watch One Piece. Oh, imagine if Tim Pool watched One Piece, he would be like Hassan Parker, who does watch One Piece.
About that, Goku trains at 100 times gravity to become strong enough to save his friends. Frieza, don't worry about the names of the characters. Just the bad guy kills his best friend, and then Goku loses it, and then his power tremendously increases out of rage. You don't want young boys to learn the lesson of struggle, become stronger, improve yourself, be the hero, sacrifice. What are they going to get if they don't have that? What they're going to get is it's going to be RuPaul's drag race. They're going to get whatever they can from.
I mean, anime, they can get the same thing in anime. To be fair. Oh, God, I love Ivankov. He's such a cool character. Oh, yeah, there's Ivankov when he, because he can switch between whatever gender he wants. Bon Clay again, fantastic. Yep. Yeah, wouldn't want RuPaul's Drag Race in our anime, would we? And it's not even like One Piece is the only anime that's got trans people in it. Trans people are in so many anime that it's just like, it's a meme. Like, trans cat girl memes are just like all over the place in anime. It is. I tell you what, if there was one type of media that I would think would be picked up pretty consistently with like conservatives who are really concerned about, grooming children by exposing them to gender ideology, I feel like Japan's relationship with gender and the way they explore it in their shows, probably a whole compartment of media they might want to try to pretend isn't cool, because they might accidentally find themselves in all these shows that, deal with people who are expressing their gender in unusual ways or expressing themselves as the opposite gender. What was a couple seasons ago, there was Tomo-chan is a Girl, which is all about a high school girl who's in love with this boy. But, she's a bit of a tomboy and she's not sure that he sees her as a girl. And so she struggles with how to express her femininity. Like, that's gender ideology, isn't it? Like, there's... God, I can't remember that. When they mix Japanese in the name, I often forget it. But there's like a whole show a season or two ago that's about a guy whose sister literally transes him into a younger sister version of himself. So he has to learn what it means to be a younger sister and how that changes his relationship dynamics with the people around him. Like, if gender ideology is a big button issue, maybe anime is something you need to cut, right? If you're trying to be consistent. But Gary, the mush in his brain, the first video I watched tonight, they asked the question, well, what the guy he was talking to was like, meme, I think comes from the word gene, which is true. But Tim's like, I've got to look that up. I've got to fact check that. Pulls up his phone, and then he starts talking about Chinese characters when they've got the word woman listed 3 times and it means adultery. Had nothing to do with what he started looking up. I think what he did is he typed in meme, M-E-M-E, and I think he came across... in Chinese, meme or meme or however it was pronounced, depending on the intonations. Like, he came across that and he just started talking about that. It was amazing. I thought Tim Pool was smarter than this. I just thought he was more disingenuous, but maybe he is just an idiot and he is not disingenuous at all. He just doesn't understand the world around him.
From TV, because you're saying this is bad. Which
is ironic because conservatives would agree with the statement of training makes you stronger, helping your friends makes you stronger.
Everyone agrees with that. That is like the lowest bar. The lowest bar in the world is people think it's good to practice, to train, to be healthy, to help your friends. Like, that is such a brain dead level. Like, that's not something that conservatives agree on. That's something that everyone agrees on.
America, dude.
They're preventing their kids from watching things, like you said, from the very things that will make them have the values that you want to pass to them.
Here's what you got to do. Okay, conservatives. You give your kids Batman, Superman, Naruto, Black Clover.
Let them discover it, though. It has to be theirs, not yours.
But I'm not so sure. But I see what you're saying. But here's the point. The point is, they go to their
groom them, indoctrinate them, and to be clear, if I have a kid, I'm going to make a concerted effort to share with them the things that were formative for me. I'm not going to sit there and pretend like, hey, here is, I don't know, what do you call Netflix in hypothetically 8 years' time? Here is the streaming services, or here is my Plex server full of stuff. Go nuts, find what you like. No, I'm going to go, okay, child of mine, you are now 5 years old. That is the age of readiness to embark on the greatest story ever told, and that is the story of the Pirate King, Monkey D. Luffy. And you can be sure as hell I will be, just like I am introducing my wife to all 62 episodes of One Piece at the moment, I will also be introducing my child to that same thing. Maybe I should try and have a child before One Piece ends so they can be there when it ends. Anyway.
They're friends. And they'll say, look at this thing that I have.
It's so cool.
Yep.
Look at this thing I found in the basement. It's called Dragon Ball.
Yep. That's right.
Look
But
at this.
I don't think it's
I feel like I'm seeing, for one of the first times, old millennials talk. And I probably do the same thing. I probably sound the same to a lot of Zoomers when I talk about some of the old stuff. But to hear two people that are presumably roughly my age talk about Dragon Ball as if it is the shit, it's just cringe, man. Like, holy shit. And look, credit to them, Dragon Ball at the very least, probably one of the least thematically deep anime out there. And that's not necessarily a diss at Dragon Ball. Like, Dragon Ball came out at a time when the genre was quite young and being developed, and was more about the journey than it was about the themes. But I mean, I guess at least they're not misinterpreting Dragon Ball, which in a way is because there's not a lot to interpret there apart from the fact that it's about the cool moments and the fun fights and stuff.
it's always true that if dad's doing it, the kids think it's uncool.
No, that's probably but it has to be something that's special to them, and they just want to devour it.
Right. I think, the way I got into anime was just through a friend.
I bet Tim doesn't think.
Like my parents obviously weren't into that stuff.
Yeah,
but my dad brought me to go see the Batman movies and stuff like that. My family would bring me to go see all the.
And now clearly Tim thinks Batman's really uncool because if your parents introduce you to it, you're not going to think it's cool. That's what he just said. He is not consistent.
All that stuff.
I had a church friend corrupt me back when Adult Swim and the Sci-Fi Channel had like old Appleseed and Dominion Tank Police, even before Ghost in the Shell became hot. And he corrupted me with all this, like, look, I can download all this anime for free. I'll burn you a CD with Berserk on it. I'm like, what is Berserk? Oh my God. And I was way too young to be watching this stuff, but it was still awesome. Akira Ghost in the Shell is not for kids, but as a kid, I watched it. And I was like, this is the coolest. This is for adults. This is mine.
I think they might not like Ghost in the Shell. It's so transhumanist.
And kids shouldn't watch Berserk, fine. But if they do happen to watch Berserk, it's for.
I like that it's not the mild nudity, it's not the violence and Ghost in the Shell, it's the transhumanism, because they might think it's okay if, someone grows up and decides they want to be a woman. Like, that. Oh, well. And it's not even what Ghost in the Shell's about. Like, Major Motoko doesn't even change genders, even though she gets an entire new fucking robot body.
First of all, it's pimp and it's the bomb and whatever. But all right. But that's where kids want to see things that maybe the parents would not allow them to see because they're attracted to the idea of what's this forbidden knowledge that I'm ready to learn about this stuff. I'm ready to watch gore and learn about sexy stuff or whatever, but I'm too
Wait, no, that's grooming. That's grooming. You can't sexualize children. Oh God. Sorry, this is actually really special being able to watch them literally admit to the fact here that it's okay for kids to see gore, violence, sexy stuff, given that they're currently operating under the assumption that it's like, the non-consensual scene that is heterosexual in Ninja Scroll. That's okay, but not RuPaul's Drag Race.
Embarrassed to ask my mom and dad about it, but the danger is instead of asking someone who might tell you a responsible answer,
stop
they're
playing
going
with your
to
hair.
creepos online.
You're on camera.
Yep. And that's why I'm scared of like kids being exposed to like there are certain types of YouTubers who are the cool, creepy youth pastor types who do watch these shows and but they'll guide them to like places where you shouldn't be going there.
This is
One
it.
Piece.
I mean, some kid is going to go to their parents. Or they're going to be around their parents. They're going to say, I found this thing I like. And the dad's going to be like, no, that's bad.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, okay, I can't go to my dad or mom with that.
I'm going to do it in secret and watch it in secret.
I'm going to go find the creepy internet person who tells me I feel good.
The rabbit holes where they're not supposed to be.
You got that dude, I don't want to say his name, who has those videos where he's such a Pennywise the Clown character. And he's like, tell your parents no.
Yeah.
Run away from them. Hide from your parents.
God, I wish he would tell us. I wish he would tell us who he was talking about. Like, the fact that he doesn't shits me, right? Because if his contention here is this person is dangerous to children, but not so dangerous that he's willing to name them in order to help bring attention to the fact that they are a negative impact on kids. Now, if I were to believe that someone was a negative influence on children. I would have no issues with being very clear that I think Ben Shapiro is a negative influence on children. I think Andrew Tate is a negative influence on children and is destroying young men. I think Stephen Crowder is a negative. I think Tim Pool is a negative. Like, I've got no issue saying it. I don't understand that he can sit here and construct an argument that this particular YouTuber who looks like Pennywise the Clown is dangerous and creepy with kids, but not say their name. Like, what is the thought process there? What is the consistency there if you don't have the courage to actually call out bad behavior? It is, the fact is, little mouse wheels are running in his brain going, hey, I know that if people check the characterization I just made of this person, it will be found to be inaccurate and misleading, so I'm not going to provide them with the reference for them to check. Maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, I've got no issue with that assumption.
It'll feel good. It's like, wow, this dude's evil.
Source.
And there's lots of those types.
Yep.
But
Name
why
them.
not fathers,
Demons.
especially fathers? Like, why
Demons.
not watch anime with your kids? Pre-screen them and find the cool ones if you want to. But do not let your kids just float around the internet finding stuff that can lead them into weird, like that. I don't remember that
Say
guy's
One
name
Piece.
even, but I know exactly who you're talking
I
about.
don't want to say his name.
Okay.
Say his name, you
I don't want to
coward.
give him.
I know who you mean though.
But it's this evil dude who makes these videos where he tells kids to like ignore their parents, to run from them. It's like, it's demonic stuff.
But that
I am willing to bet $50 that the context of him saying to kids that they should leave our home is that home is dangerous and they are suffering abuse. And I've got no fucking idea who they're talking about.
that's how these types of people find kids who, and even kids
Predators.
without their parents around. Hey, I'll be your family. I'm your found family.
Yep.
Why don't we hang out?
That's the fucking... That's like the theme of Naruto. Naruto is all about found family. Naruto grows up as a fucking orphan, and one of the major themes of that is how the people around him become important parts of his life and become like family. The fucking guy that owns the ramen stall that often treats him to meals like is like a semi-surrogate father figure. Kakashi is like a semi father figure to Naruto. It is literally like, I didn't think of this before because Naruto, again, it's kind of like Dragon Ball. I don't find the themes to be super deep and super thoughtful. It is more, hey, ninja wants to be the best ninja in the ninja world. But if anything, yes, Naruto is about how to find a family when you're alone, that you can use the people around you to build a support network for when you go through tough times, so that you've got people there when you have, you know, problems that you need to solve. It is about found family, and now they don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand. Oh, Jesus. Katara Living Alone. I've seen like one episode, so I can't talk much about it, but yeah. Oh my God.
Out, and then they can do whatever they want to the kid or plant whatever memes and seeds into their kid's head. But
he's thinking about Catholic priests here. That's who he's thinking about, but he won't say it because you'd rather imagine the YouTubers that are doing this. But we don't have stats on the YouTubers doing this. We've got stats on the Catholics doing this.
that's how these weirdos replicate. They find vulnerable kids. I hate to say it that way. They find vulnerable kids, and then there's just more and more of them. And it can be stopped by parents just being a part of their kids' hobbies.
We are not supposed to, as a species, separate ourselves from our children the way we do.
Fair.
That a dad says, "I'm off to work, kids," and leaves is an aberration, which is causing societal decline.
Universal basic income, let parents spend more time at home, maternal and paternal leave, 4-day work weeks. Oh my God, is Tim Pool about to reveal himself to actually be on the left here?
Okay. It used to be the dad would wake up, let's say blacksmith, and and the kid is now 10 years old.
Like Kingdom Come.
And he'd go into the his workshop, and he'd be like, "Son."
I like how like the guy just was like Kingdom Come. It's a video game. Like it's God, my God, they
"Get in here. I need a pail of water." Yes, Dad. And the kid is with his dad the whole time, learning from his dad. The daughter is with the mom. And as a family, they're learning and working with the community. We got to this point in industrialization where it's like, I'm going to work and you will never see what I do. That moment separated parents from instilling their skills, values, and assets to their children. And then we put kids in schools, institutionalized learning facilities, so the government could train them.
To train them to be more drones like...
Wait, creepy?
Facilities, so the government could train them.
To train them to be more drones like
Yep.
the parents in the industrial...
Parents got to bring their kids to work.
Yeah.
So school, as far as I can understand, is actually a result of capital owners who needed a workforce that had a minimum level of education so they could perform the duties that were becoming needed in the Industrial Revolution. So when people needed to actually operate like assembly line machinery and stuff, the level of education of workers actually rose. So schools became an important part of the pipeline to ensure that there are enough workers to satisfy the needs of capitalists to create profit from the labor, right? Because if you teach people for the first 12 years of their, I guess, life as people, right? So once they're old enough to become a person with a personality, send them to school for 12 years and they'll be more productive when they get to the factories. Like, Tim's unironically describing the circumstances of capitalism that led to people being alienated from each other as a society. And someone might make an argument that that alienation from society is like the systemic core of a lot of the problems that we have today, where we have things like increased levels of crime and lack of empathy and dehumanization of people that we don't really understand or see very often, whether it's simply neighbors that we don't recognize anymore, people who don't look like us because we don't actually exist in a society broadly. We just go to these very narrow rooms that we occupy for 40 hours a week where we do our jobs in our homes for the rest of the time. And occasionally we'll get in a car and go to a shopping center. Like, he's describing the material circumstances of capitalism, and yet he will never, ever, ever have the introspection or the thought to think, well, why do we have such a compartmentalized way of living where children and parents don't actually get that time together? Why do people not have leisure time and access to downtime, despite the fact that productivity has increased dramatically, and yet our requirement to be at work has not come down in any way, shape, or form commensurate with that increase in productivity? Because the more we work, the more that productivity goes up, the more it gets converted into profits instead of into benefits for us as people. He will never make that discussion something that comes up on his show, right? He will always just look at it as, no. Despite all that, I'm going to just say it's the government being creepy. He has taken all of that down and gone, it is just because the government wants to be creepy. That's why children and parents are alienated from each other, because parents are at work, children are at school, and government institutionalizing children. That's what it is. That is his level of engagement with what he has just... This is why it is so difficult to actually have these discussions online, because the problem is, right, you have one side of politics who will identify a problem, and you have the other side who will identify the same problem. And we can all agree, I agree with Tim Pool here, that it is a problem that families, that communities are splintered and isolated from each other because of the way we as a society operate. The problem is, once we have both, myself and Tim Pool, identified that issue, we come to drastically different outcomes or, conclusions based on the information we are both seeing and both agreeing upon. Tim, and I'm going to say Tim represents quite a lot of the people on the right, will see these issues, these complex societal interactions, and he will go, it's the government institutionalizing people, and it's creepy. He will give us the most basic, thoughtless, simple, easy answer that feels like it's right, that feels intuitive. It's like, you know what? The government owns the schools. The government requires us to go to schools. It must be the government that is institutionalizing kids, and that's the cause of the problem. He will never, ever look to articulate the more complex circumstances that have led to the industrialization of work and the requirement of schools to ensure that that now industrialized workplace has workers that can actually do the jobs that are needed. He will never look at making that connection, because the fight that we have against conservatives against the right is the fact that we need to counter their simple and straightforward ideas with the complex, real ideas, the actual societal issues that need to be addressed instead of the simple solutions that are meaningless, thoughtless, and frankly won't get us out of this at all. Because when they start to look at what are the solutions to this, they'll start to say the solutions are, well, get a better job. Well, I'm ranting now. Let's keep going.
That's why I tell people here, I'm like, dude, it is a cultural shift that needs to go back.
Yeah.
Like, whenever you're able, we have work parties and stuff. I'll be like, bring your kids, man. And no one should have a problem with it. Human beings should not be like, oh, the baby's crying, I'm angry about it. No, too bad. Too bad. If somebody who works here is like, I'd like to come to the work event, but I have the kids, bring them.
Yeah.
And if anyone has an issue with that, I'm simply going to say to them, like, dude, human beings are this way. That's it.
Too many parents of our generation act like their kids are a burden.
Yep.
It's like,
but not only that, like when I hear, I don't get mad when I hear babies crying. I'm not annoyed by it. I'm not frustrated by it. It makes me smile. Like, I'm not the baby suffering.
It makes me
or anything.
panic. Like, oh, we got to
Right.
help them.
Right.
But then you learn the difference between actual crying and I just want attention crying.
Sure. When I'm on a plane and I hear a baby crying, I don't get angry about it. And I hear the mom saying, like, I can hear like the parents trying to get the baby to stop crying. It makes me laugh. I'm like, this is life. These are humans. This is what babies do. So if someone has kids, those kids should periodically visit work. I understand some things can be disruptive. You can't have little kids running around knocking over milk and stuff like that. But within reason, at a certain age, especially like once a kid's like 9 years old, they're old.
I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. All right, chat. I did see something. I just want to see where it started about Ghost in the Shell. Yeah, Antja. Just to clarify with the Ghost in the Shell thing and the transhumanism and stuff, I was more making fun of the fact that it appeared to me that Tim Pool and his guest here, that they were being shy about Ghost in the Shell because they think there's a connection between transhumanism and transgenderism. I'm not. I don't think Ghost in the Shell's at all about that. I just think it was funny that they appeared to have some sort of slight moral panic about a show that might be seen to be in favor of trans ideology, in the sense that Ghost in the Shell is a movie where it's more introspective about who you are is internal, not external. And I agree, it is a big fucking leap in logic to sort of get that out of Ghost in the Shell, and probably almost certainly isn't intentional from the writer. But I just think it's funny that I think because transhumanism has the word trans in it, it kind of scared them a little bit. That's where I was at. Because yeah, you're right. Like Major Motoko doesn't have any issues of gender or dysphoria or anything. She is just worried about whether she's human or not, which is the main focus of that show. Holy moly, we have gotten sidetracked. That was nothing at all what I thought a Tim Pool look was going to be. I am still curious about more videos because I'm still pretty awake, and I don't know what time it is because my watch has died. I think they were coping a little bit when they're sort of sitting there trying to virtue signal about how crying children don't bother them. Whether or not a crying child bothers me is a function of where I am, how tired I am, my ability to mitigate the circumstances by gaining some distance or not. Because I can tell you what, the last flight I was on, there was about 3 kids, and it was a red-eye flight. And holy moly, it was, what do you call it? Yeah, red-eye flight. So it was like 10 o'clock until 7 a.m., and the kids just took turns crying, and it was really starting to frustrate me because I was trying to sleep. I got half an hour sleep there. And look, I don't blame the kids, I don't blame the parents, but I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I think it's funny, I think it's enjoyable to hear a baby cry. Like, fucking hell, like, just be a human, be a fucking person, and go, yeah, crying is literally an act designed to get people's attention and make people want to stop the crying. Like, it's genetically predisposed to sort of itch your brain so you do something for the kid. Jump on the press. Yeah. All right. I'm going to try and Tim Pool, Lance Surfs. So he doesn't appear to have the clips on his own channel. So there's the video we started with where he's just debriefing about it. We've got all these other channels that are responding to the discussion. We've got someone that thinks we've got someone who thinks Tim Pool destroys Lance, which is not what I saw, but to be fair, what I saw was leftist people talking about it. But I don't want to... why is the video not there? Surf's destroyed on Timcast. Oh, is it because I'm looking at the wrong channel? Is there a different... does he have two channels? That might be it. I'm lucky. My two cats are complete angels and don't meow very often. They claw my wife and they leave scratches on her legs in the morning, but they don't do it to me, so it's fine. God, why does he have two channels and he does the same content on both channels? Oh, God, these fucking thumbnails give me a headache just looking at them. All right, it was a few days ago. God, they all look like the sort of people you expect to be on Timcast.
You were talking about how women...
Is it just the 1 30-minute video? Come on, at least clip this up. Jesus.
You were talking about...
God, I should have had that full screen in case there was something dodgy in my background. Yeah, you need big fonts and, yeah, red capitalized words, but don't take up the whole fucking thumbnail. We're not looking at this in our fucking iPhone 5 with a 4.5-inch screen. Come on, Tim, you're a fucking professional. Put in chapters, Jesus. All right, so we can see some lumps and bumps. Let's have a look at the lumps and bumps. I can't be bothered going through the whole 30 minutes.
Early delivery, maybe.
But are there situations where if the baby...
Oh, yes, abortion. Fucking let's go. Let's go. Let's... No, fuck it. Let's just do a debate review. Fuck it.
disgusted you are that women may have an abortion in the 9th month, right? Or even
a viable baby.
Of a viable baby.
That could live.
I wanted to scream at that time, being like, women who have abortions in the 9th month, they're not doing that because they got bored, or all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't care anymore. They do that because it's a fucking tragedy. Like, statistically, women who are getting abortions in the 9th month, it's because there's a medical complication that could kill them. That's why they have to do it. What do you mean false argument?
Okay, I've seen a few people respond to parts of this, and this is where we go back to like that earlier clip that we were watching where Tim was using a hypothetical, like, you know, if you were to say that, you know, you're in a relationship as a man and you're in a relationship with a trans woman, and, you know, Tim being Tim, he said a male trans, but he meant trans woman. If you were to go to this particular casino, stand up in this restaurant in front of 1,000 people and say that you're in a relationship with this trans woman, is it gay? What do you think they would say? Completely ridiculous hypothetical that he uses. And now, again, we see the same tactic here where you've got Lance, who's actually saying that the stats show that when an abortion is done in the 9th month, it is only done due to medical necessity to save the life of the mother. And Tim's response is that is irrelevant. Was it irrelevant? What did he say exactly?
Have abortions in the 9th month. They're not doing that because they got bored or all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't care anymore. They do that because it's a fucking tragedy. Like statistically, women who are getting abortions in the 9th month, it's because there's a medical complication that could kill them. That's why they have to do it.
False argument. How is it a false argument to point out that when there are abortions in the 9th month, the stats show it is due to a medical emergency? That is a perfect argument. That is the argument. That is the reality that we deal with and that we need to respond to when we're talking about these topics. And Tim just doesn't want to engage with the idea that when women have abortions, they have them for good reasons, and therefore we should not be banning them.
What do you
False
mean
argument.
False. That's the real world.
I already said viable. Try again.
What are you talking about, Tim?
I already said abortion of viable fetuses at 9 months.
This is ridiculous.
Do you know what viable means?
Yes.
It means the baby can survive on its own without medical complications.
Absolutely.
And why legalize abortion of viable fetuses at 9 months when the baby could just be delivered?
Women are not getting abortions at the 9th month for pleasure or because they want to suddenly do it for kicks. No, that doesn't happen. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy of the highest. Because there are medical operations that could.
Okay, so this is something I haven't seen people actually say when they respond to this, because at the moment, Tim's question is why legalize it? Why make something legal if it's not happening? Which is interesting to me, particularly from someone who I think in other spheres will argue against government overreach and over-regulation. I mean, we saw in the last video that, he sort of hinted at the idea that schools are government creepiness and maybe we should question the viability of schools. Like, the schools are legal, a legal requirement, in fact. They go beyond just being legal to being illegal to not attend. So Tim can see a point where maybe he would disagree with the legalization of something just for the sake of it. But when we talk about things like abortions and the question of why make it legal for a woman to get a medical procedure, the real question is, why should it be illegal, right? You typically want law in your country to be permissive, not descriptive, right? So laws should be permissive in that you can do something as long as it's not illegal, as opposed to having to have laws that make things explicitly legal before you do that, because then you can't do anything unless the government's told you can do it. So we don't want to have a situation where women can only get an abortion if the government tells them it's okay. We want a society where women can make that choice with their doctor because it's not illegal. That is small government, right? That is sort of the goal of a lot of conservatives. Small government, low power, let people have freedom, but not an abortion.
Could kill the mother and they need to get an abortion.
Why legalize?
I just told you that's the reason why.
So all right, I'll try and break it down for you. Can the baby survive?
He is so condescending, and let's be real here. Lance is trying continually to point out that he's talking about how the real world, how these situations actually develop, and that women aren't deciding to terminate viable pregnancies at the 9th month. They only do that when there is an issue. But Tim continually retreats to his straw man that he's constructed of, well, no. Should it be legal if it's viable? People don't do it, Tim. People don't do it. So we don't need to make things illegal unless there's a risk that people do these things. And people don't do these things because it is ridiculous.
Okay, let's talk about a baby. The baby can survive on its own, yes?
Sure.
Okay. Abortion is defined by Planned Parenthood and the law as terminating the life of the baby.
Correct.
Why terminate the life of the baby if it can survive on its own?
Because it could kill both of them. That's why it is done at that stage.
So how do you
kill one or the other, and they have.
And here we go. Lance is just talking about the reality of what happens and how those decisions are made, and Tim doesn't want to interact with the actual reality of the circumstances that lead to abortions or have this as the outcome. Instead, he wants to retract to his contrived imagination where there is a healthy woman and a healthy baby, and at month 9, not at 6 weeks, not at 4 weeks, not plan B, not anything else, he is determined that a woman has gone through an entire pregnancy, has gone through all the trimesters and is just about to finish up with the 3rd trimester, and suddenly goes, I'm bored, I'm done. You know what? Cancel it, doctor. Cancel it. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It's imaginary. It's like saying, do we need to make it illegal for people to? Oh, it's something ridiculous that's not illegal that people could do. I don't know, but Jesus.
You have to make the tough decision at that point.
So how do you remove the fully formed 9-month baby at that point?
Oh, I don't know the science of it. I've never performed that operation
So
before.
shouldn't the law then be, if the baby must be removed and it is alive and capable of survival, all actions must be taken to preserve the life of the child and the mother?
I would say they'd probably choose the mother first, right?
Why?
And this is such a strange scenario. How often do you think that this happens and all of a sudden they're like, the baby could have lived. You could have done it. Why did you choose the other option? It's like, this is a tragedy of the highest order because they want to have the kid. At 9 months pregnant, a woman is on her way to give birth. So it's like, it's the worst possible fucking thing that could happen to her.
That's not always, again, I said I didn't want a dogpile, but it's statistically not true. There have been surveys done on women who had later abortions, and for a pretty large sum of them, it's because they were not sure whether the father of the child was willing to commit. And then when they found out he wasn't willing to commit, they would have the abortion. And so
I'm going to say, without looking at the source, partly because they haven't cited it, bullshit that happened at 9 months.
There are different stats you're going to find for different points in pregnancy. When it comes all the way along to 9 months, I don't have the statistical data.
Genius. Fucking imagine that. I just made a bullshit argument based on something that's not even relevant to this point of 9-month abortions.
On that. However, I do know for later term abortions, there are reasons other than what is traditionally considered to be a medically necessary reason. For example, some people will say that a negative mental health outcome is a reason to abort a child later in pregnancy. So if the woman is depressed, they will list that as a reason for why the child had to be terminated to save the life of the mother, which is certainly not the case, very obviously. And to the point of what Tim is saying, when we say there's no such thing as a medically necessary abortion, the principle behind that is, if there is an operation which is necessary to save the life of the mother, and then she miscarries the child as a result of that operation, which was necessary to save her life, that's not an abortion because nobody's intent was to go in there and end the life of the unborn child.
This is where these philosophy bros sort of lose the plot a little bit. And this is why I sort of broadly have issues with the way people talk about philosophy on Twitter and YouTube and stuff, right? Is because they use philosophy as a way to discover truth, as opposed to a way to understand how you think, I think, we think, your internal process of, working through this crazy thing called life, right? They think that they can take philosophical principles and use them to find out, okay, in this circumstance, what is good, what is bad. I don't think that's the way philosophy works. I don't think that's the reason philosophy exists. I think philosophy is more about understanding our processes individually, not how we then justify what is moral, ethical, or any of that sort of stuff. The problem here is that they exclusively think of this as an A or B scenario. You get an abortion or you don't get an abortion. They don't think about the fact that, right? So if you were to write laws, if you were in a position where you were like, you know what, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to type out a law, and I'm going to hit enter, I'm going to hit print, and I'm going to print it out. I'm going to hand it to the Prime Minister of Australia, to Anthony Albanese, or if you're an American, pretend you're going to hand it to Joe Biden. That's fine too. And that law is going to now be in effect, right? Let's imagine that's the process that you're about to go through, right? If you were to write a law saying abortions, unless medically necessary, are illegal, and medical necessity means X, Y, Z, enter, print, and hand that out. What are the outcomes of having that law in place? How robust is that law when it comes to dealing with things that are, maybe it's hard to determine from the outside what happened there. What happens when we have things like a miscarriage, but then the medical necessity for the woman is to have the non-viable fetus removed from her body, but because there's not a good level of data or a good level of record keeping on this, the doctor's worried that, hey, if I do this, what happens if I get charged? What happens if someone claims that this was an abortion, but it's not an abortion? I can't do this. That's too much risk for me. And that puts the woman's life in danger because no one wants to provide life-saving services for her in case it gets identified under the law as an abortion. Well, that might actually be a really bad law. That might be a law that is in fact counterintuitive to the proposed idea of making sure that people's lives are saved as much as possible. The problem is that the law and medical need operate on two very different timescales, right? The law, the legal system, that operates weeks, months, some cases years, right? Obviously not necessarily in these types of cases, but like it is a slow process. Whereas medical necessity is seconds, minutes, hours, maybe days for people to make decisions that can change the outcome of a procedure, of someone's viability, of someone being able to survive a procedure. They can't wait for the legal system. And so even without getting into whether or not it is right or wrong for an abortion to be done in any particular circumstance, I personally think that on the basis of the fact that we actually can't manage this law, we actually can't put this law into place and use it in a meaningful way, means it's not a viable law, right? You don't want any laws on the books if they can't actually be used, right? Because the effect of an abortion ban, particularly in America, where it's a very partisan political space and like what is medically necessary will greatly divide state by state. Like, it effectively becomes just a total ban because then you increase the risk for doctors and medical professionals to not even want to provide that service. And even though you can sit there and go, well, we didn't make it illegal, we just made sure that it was only for those that are medically necessary, but they missed out this edge case or they missed out that interpretation for, you know, what this particular mother might need or all sorts of things. Because, you know, it turns out that the process of having a baby is complicated. And maybe we should have some sort of professional industry that looks after that type of procedure and makes decisions on what the best course of action is when it comes to medical care, and let them do it. We might call them doctors, right? We might call them nurses. We might call them midwives. We might call it the healthcare system, right? And they can make those decisions. And we'll just leave the politicians out of it, maybe.
Child. And so if a woman's having complications where she has to deliver early, you deliver the child early, of course. And if you're at a point in pregnancy where the child isn't viable, that's a horrible tragedy. You still do what you can to save the child, but you can't always save the child, and we understand that. But to go in and rip the child apart to end their life is never something which is medically required, even though an early delivery may be.
But are there situations where if the baby is in, this is so harsh, in its complete form, that even trying to induce early pregnancy could kill the mother, so they have to break the baby's body apart so that they can get it out without killing the mother?
I've never heard of such a thing. So, and there are letters, by the way, signed by literally thousands of doctors who have said this.
Let me ask. Let me ask.
Can I just say one thing? So 88% of abortions are in the first 12.
This man has the fucking stats. This man has facts, right? And I'm not saying that means he is therefore correct. But what I'm saying is he clearly has a better understanding than the other fuckwit that's like, well, there's been letters by thousands of doctors that have said, didn't really give us exactly what it said.
12 weeks, 88.
Yeah.
88% of abortions. Less than 1.3% of abortions take place near the 8th or 9th month.
How many abortions
is that Guttmacher?
Well, how many is that?
I don't know the actual numbers. This is the percentages.
13,000.
Okay, but we're talking about less than 1.3%.
Hold on, 13,000. That's the number of people who die from gun violence in the U.S. each year that aren't suicides.
Gentlemen,
so that's
I am
13,000.
not here to justify abortion when it happens as in it's a good thing.
No.
I don't celebrate
Brother,
it.
You're saying it doesn't happen.
No.
You're saying it doesn't happen. It
doesn't
happens 13,000 times.
I said it's extremely...
I love, this is so American brain, to be like, hey, the risks associated with childbirth that end in abortion is lower than the gun deaths, excluding suicide. Therefore, why do you have an issue with that? Why don't you have an issue with abortions, but you've got an issue with gun control? As if like gun-motivated violence has anything to do with, as Lance has said, a tragic outcome of a birth, of a pregnancy. It is amazing. Like he's just sitting there. Like clearly he knows the number for gun deaths, which God knows if it's even accurate because of the way they fucking self-select their numbers. But the fact that he's sitting there with that number, ready to make that correlation to try and own the fucking leftists who presumably must have some stance on gun control that they don't like. But to think that it's even comparable, like I don't give a shit about the comparison between gun deaths and some tragedy that no one is doing for ideological reasons. No one is giving other people abortions against their will, but people are shooting and killing other people against their will. Like I have a completely different level of comfort with the amount of abortions that, may be the result of complications of pregnancy versus people killed because you fucking Americans think that guns solve every problem and that you've got a God-given right to have a fucking gun in your house.
There is 338 million Americans. I'm sorry. The numbers are going to be a little daunting. Yes, the numbers will be high.
Well,
I'm not here to celebrate that.
I don't understand your argument then.
My argument is that there's a lot of human beings.
13,000 people die from guns, we have a problem.
They're actually chasing that issue of like, oh, well, if gun violence is bad when it's 13,000, why aren't late stage abortions that are a result of medical necessity bad? Like, holy shit.
Right?
If 13,000 people die from guns, we have a problem. Yes, of course.
If 13,000 late-term abortions happen, is that a problem?
These are completely different things.
Well, how so?
Okay, so if someone dies by a gun, have they been shot? Were they killed? Did they kill themselves? Was it a suicide? Was it a gang violence thing? Who knows?
That's a good question.
Can I clarify? I don't want to argue. I just want to clarify.
I need to answer this.
Well,
in the case of late,
yes,
but in the case of late-term abortions, more often than not, when statistics say, and when they are polled, they say the reason that they are giving it is because it's a medical complication that could result in the death of the mother or the child.
Right. So let's. Can we make the argument then that the use of guns on people are allowed?
The mental magnitude of Tim Pool on display. If people get abortions and we don't like abortions, no one likes abortions. Even Lance is like, I'm not celebrating abortions, but this is the reality of what happens. But if people get abortions, then can people kill each other with guns too? Because they're the same thing. If it's the same number, if the amount of abortions is equal to the amount of gun violence, after we take away suicides, because for some reason we don't count suicides, if those two numbers are equal, then gun violence is good, right? That is unassailable logic. That is amazing.
Use of guns of people are
to end their lives is allowed.
So that's murder. You're describing murder.
So if Colorado, for instance, passes a law saying there is no medical requirement for an abortion, is it wrong to kill the baby?
You're trying to compare murdering someone with a gun to a woman having to make a medical decision that could basically preserve her life.
No. I said not a medical reason. That's what I'm saying.
So if something that doesn't happen happens, what would you do? Tim, it doesn't happen, so I don't like this is not relevant to whether or not something should be illegal. No. If something that doesn't happen happens, should we change the law? If the thing I imagine is possible in an infinite amount of universes, and it happens in one of those universes, should we in the Earth 52 make a law here to make it illegal here? Because in an infinite amount of universes, this hypothetical happened somewhere and... Genius.
Should she have the ability to have an abortion for any reason? Yes.
At 9 months.
At 9 months, I would say at 9 months, because it only happens according to the stats based.
I think Lance here, I personally think he should have been like, yes. Because the fact of the matter is that there are no instances where at 9 months a woman decides to get an abortion for no reason outside of medical complications that affect the viability of her or the child, and they need to make a choice. And based on that fact, we should not be making laws that don't have an impact because they're based around circumstances that don't exist in reality. And that is why I think that it is wrong to make abortion illegal, even at 9 months, because it just doesn't happen. He should have bitten that and just been very clear with that. But he's getting caught up with the idea of whether it's right or wrong. But Tim is asking a question of whether something should be legal or illegal, which, funnily enough, is a theme in conservative punditry, where they will oscillate between whether they're talking about something being illegal and something being right. If it's legal and it's wrong, but they like it, they'll just argue it's right because it's legal. If it's illegal but it's right, they'll argue that it's government censorship, government interference, government overreach, all that sort of stuff. It's amazing. It's fascinating to see it because, to my mind, people that are on the left will consistently argue for what is right. Regardless of whether it is legal or illegal, they will argue for what is morally or ethically right under their ideology. Whereas people on the right will actually change depending on what is more convenient to them.
Based on complete medical necessity, she has a right to do it.
No, that's not true.
She should have a right
Hold on. Colorado.
Whoa. You're talking about what actually happens. I'm talking about my hypothetical.
Legalized abortion in up to 9 months with no medical reason required. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that decision, yes.
So the baby could survive on its own, and the mother is legally now allowed to just end its life.
She has the right if she wanted to. You're saying so in Colorado, and
it's not a trick question. You're allowed
I know,
that.
but I'm asking you because you're the one who brought this up. I don't know what Colorado specific law says. So if you were saying that in Colorado, women have the ability at 9 months to have an abortion for any reason, they could just decide that they're
Elective,
bored.
yeah.
Okay, I think they should have the right to do that, but the stats show that they're not doing that. But they should have a legal right to do that. Yes, it's their body, it's their choice, of course.
So this is what I disagree on. I think if the baby needs to be...
No, government does not have enough control over people's lives, Tim. I agree. They should also control women's reproductive decisions at late-term pregnancy points. Definitely. No, Tim, living his best life out here, advocating for greater government control. Fantastic. Love to see it. Not creepy at all.
Removed from the woman. There's no reason to kill it. You know what I mean? Like you could just C-section and then put it for adoption.
But I'm telling you that doesn't happen.
But it does. But hold on.
Like you might be able to bring up anecdotes, but the stats don't say that.
Hold on. Like, why allow it to happen? I just don't understand. Are you arguing? Wait, hold on. Are you arguing you oppose it, and you think it's morally wrong, but you think it should be legal?
I think that women should have the right to decide what they do and have bodily autonomy over their own bodies.
We're not talking about her body. We're talking about...
It is her body. Of course it is. At 9 months, even if it's still inside her, it's still her body. Even if it's a viable baby, it's still her body.
God damn it, my mouse is starting to fuck around. See, this is where I think it's possible that Lance doesn't have a background in sort of understanding like laws and policies and how governments actually decide what they're going to regulate and how they're going to regulate, our lives. And it is a huge overreach on Tim to push the idea of, well, why shouldn't the government decide this particular case in every case and how it should go? Like, why shouldn't the government be regulating this part of our lives? Because the sort of implicit bias there is like, well, the government doesn't regulate quite a lot of our lives. Quite a lot of what I do is not regulated by the government. The government tends to only regulate, the big things. They don't regulate the small things. And individual decisions on healthcare are one of those things that tend not to be highly regulated. Like they'll regulate things like, what's the testing to ensure that medicine coming into a market is safe. What they won't regulate is, what decision does a pharmacist or a doctor make in terms of what they think is going to be the best medical pharmaceutical to treat someone's ailment, right? And that's what he's advocating for here with abortion, and that the state should decide whether something was right or wrong when it happens at a particular point, which is just, it's a very big misunderstanding of I think the role of a healthy government.
Removal of the baby, yes?
The forceful removal of the baby or...
Forceful.
So she chooses to have that. She should have the right.
The woman says the baby must be removed from my body. Why kill the baby if they're removing it?
I don't think they should do that. I would if they ask me, Lance, should I do this? I would say no, but she should have a right. Yes, of course. It's her body still. That doesn't stop.
So the woman is pregnant, the baby is viable and capable of surviving on its own.
Sure.
And she says before it breaches oxygen, kill it. Do you think that should be allowed?
This is, again, the baby guillotines. This is why I brought that up. But a weird scenario. This doesn't happen. This is not the real world.
Yep, there it is. It's arguing over something that doesn't happen, and Tim thinks he's a good debater.
Does. And if the argument is that it doesn't happen enough for you to care, that's fine. You're allowed to believe that.
Sure.
What I don't understand is it seems like your position is a rather shocked position.
To be clear, as passionate as Tim and his other fuckwit co-host or whatever he is, as passionate as they are about the fact that, well, no, this does happen, they haven't once specified, well, actually, look, it happens X amount of times in Colorado or X amount of times in America. Not once have they brought up a stat, which suggests to me that they are working off anecdotes. So when Lance earlier was like, well, you can bring up anecdotes maybe, but it doesn't happen with any regularity, and they got defensive about not having brought up anecdotes, It's really suspicious, besides the fact he's got a fucking katana and a fucking rifle on his wall.
Where you recognize there is something inherently wrong with taking the life of a baby that could survive on its own, but you're also taking the tribal position of women should be allowed to do it anyway.
No. If you were to ask me, Tim, hey.
I love the idea that it's tribal. It is tribal for someone to be of the opinion that women have the right to choose what healthcare they need at a given time, including in a pregnancy. That is tribal. That is the default brain off answer whenever a conservative hears a position that they've heard repeated from other people, like a popular leftist position, right? Like join a union, or hey, maybe we should have green sources of renewable energy, or hey, maybe we need more support for people on JobKeeper or on Social Security. Oh, that you're just being tribal. That's just the tribal position. This motherfucker is out here talking about abortion being a moral wrong that should be made illegal, as if that's not a tribal position of the entire conservative punditry, billion-dollar fucking industry that's out there every fucking year, continually pushing this to the point where in America you've got the fucking Supreme Court fucking this all up after it had already been decided. And yet he's got the gall to accuse Lance of the serfs in the leftist movement of being tribal, when I guarantee you, when you come to any fucking political representation map, leftists, not people that are liberal, not people that don't vote Republican but vote Democrat, but leftists, like actual leftists that believe in socialization of services and basic rights for humans, are small. And so to be like, oh, you're just being tribal, despite the fact that outside of dumbasses like libertarians and anarchists and stuff, that leftists are the smallest of the major ideological groups represented in the politics today, is just insane. Brain off, mate. Tim Glass, brain off.
Do you think it's a good idea if this woman who's 9 months pregnant, suddenly she got bored with the pregnancy, she doesn't want to have it anymore, but the baby's viable? Do you think that's a good thing to do? I would be like, no, of course not.
Then why should it be allowed?
Because it's still her right. It's still her body.
But
bodily autonomy doesn't.
And again, Tim is asking, why should it be allowed? Well, I would ask the question to Tim, why should we make it illegal on the provision that it currently does not happen? We do not see this happen in real life. It is not expressed in any type of significant enough amount of numbers for us to make it illegal, given that if we were to make it illegal to stop the I'm having abortion for fun crowd, it would have this knock-on effect on people who might need an abortion for a medical requirement that may then have issues with making its way through the legal process if there was, for example, a disgruntled partner who was trying to prevent the abortion despite the fact that it should be the woman's right to make that decision. Tim doesn't think about that. And I'll be honest, it's a little bit of a shame that the interlocutor here doesn't bring that up. But I'll be fair to him. They've had this discussion in the moment, and I only really thought about that just now. And I've sort of, like I said, I've seen a few clips of this floating around over the last day or so. So can't think of every perfect argument in the moment. So fair enough. But I think that would be a good question to put back to Tim. Hey, if you think that you need to save this minority, minuscule, not even reported amount of cases where women have abortions for fun, but it's got a risk of these known patients that we know have abortions for known medical reasons, but they might be subjected to legal kickback from malicious reports and malicious activity from people that are involved. Do you think that you can weigh those two things up and say, well, I'm going to err in favor of my imagined scenario, despite the actual real life cost over-regulating abortions is going to have? Like, it's an easy answer. Like, it doesn't matter what side you're on, because it's just been reduced down to, well, we have to pick the side where more life is saved more often than the one that is less often lives are saved. You know, it's the easy trolley car problem where there's a track with one life and a track with two lives. You pick the track with one life, and that's what you go with because you have to make the decision.
It doesn't stop at my morality. Tim, it's not my choice. Right? It's not my, yes, but that's not my choice.
Why kill it? Why kill it?
That's her choice, not mine.
You're right, Mick. Like that, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. It's ridiculous.
Why kill the baby?
Ask her. Ask her.
Okay, so
he's asking Lance to answer a question to a hypothetical he invented.
My point is simply this: you don't need to be shocked by it. You are allowed to have that moral position. I think most people in America would prescribe that to be would ascribe evil to that.
Sure, but that's the idea. You can ascribe evil to whatever you want. That's up to you. That's your choice.
The idea that you would say
doesn't mean that she should
the woman
legally be
wants the baby removed, and then in the process, instead of letting the baby live, remove it but kill it. Right? There's no reason to do that. There's no. You can give the baby up for adoption. You can drop the baby off on the doorstep of a post office.
Okay, I thought of it. Should we make it illegal for a restaurant owner to kill a child who's being kicked out of the restaurant with their family because they are disruptive? Should we make it illegal for a restaurant owner to kill a child as they're kicking the family and the child out Because that would be awful, right? One life lost is one too many. So why don't we make a law that explicitly makes it illegal for that child to be killed by a restaurant manager when they're being kicked out of a restaurant because they were thrown food or something, right? Like that's what it is. It's this silly hypothetical situation that doesn't happen. But if you ever saw a story where, hey, this happened, you would actually find there might be other ways that the legal system will express itself to solve that issue. And we don't need to make specific fantasy scenarios that we need to then make specific laws to deal with in order to get an outcome.
Office.
I agree with you. I'm not disputing
So why
that.
legalize, even if it's one? Why legalize? You see, this is the craziest thing.
Because her autonomy should not be cut off based on your morality. Because you don't think that idea is good. You don't like it.
But the baby's been removed from her body.
It. Well, that's if it was removed from her body and it was still viable, right? And that's where the baby guillotines come in, because I don't think this happens. I don't think women on the 9th month get abortions with viable living children and then be like, I don't want it, kill it. I don't think that happens.
You don't have to think it happens, but statistically it does, because your entire argument is this only happens for reasons.
What is the statistic? See, this is the problem, right? If Lance is like, I don't believe it, he can't then go, I don't believe it. Look, I've got this statistic that says 0% of the times it happens, because we don't get reports on things that don't happen. We only get reports on things that do happen, and these fuckwits don't have any.
Of the health of the mother or the health of the unborn child.
I said,
so you believe
I said the statistics show that at the 9th month, if
What's he been doing? What's this goatee motherfucker been doing for the last 10 minutes? Shouldn't he have been looking for the statistics on his claim to, like, isn't that the whole point, that Tim has his fucking cronies there to do fact checking and stuff? Like, from my understanding from people that have been on Timcast is that they can actually take their laptops and they can actually do stuff live if they want to. And Tim does do it, but not in this case. His fucking @ symbol has a fucking beanie on it. Fucking hell.
a woman is going to have an abortion, it's typically because it's a medical complication that could either endanger her or the child's life.
And what I am saying is there are doctors who will justify that by saying the medical complication is she is depressed. That is literally one of the reasons given in surveys of women. And another reason.
Doctors know. Doctors are healthcare professionals. This is funny as well for another reason, and I don't mean abortions are funny, but it's funny that at the moment, currently, Tim's team are using the mental health excuse as an excuse, as in they're discounting mental health as a real issue, as if like having a mother who had mental health problems and might have some pretty significant impacts on her ability to operate, and that a child in that circumstance might make things not just worse, but also more dangerous for both of them, as if that's not a thing, as if that's not actually, mental health is health. Like, as if like, you've got like physical health complications, they're fine. But if it's a mental health complication, well, is that real? Fucking cunts.
Reason that is given is that I didn't know the man who I was going to be with.
Okay, but Seamus, I got to stop you because this is a nebulous argument that doesn't get anywhere, and I can respect the point that if you
did he just sum up his entire argument as nebulous? Because Seamus, okay, we've got a name for our other protagonist here. Seamus is supporting Tim's argument of like, well, no, what Tim's saying does happen, and Tim's just described it as a nebulous argument. That's fantastic.
Go to a left. If you try and look this up, you're going to find left-wing sources and right-wing sources that will contradict each other. So my question is strictly on the legality of terminating the life of a child. I can sit here and pull up, oh, hey, here's one. Women abort Down syndrome babies late term rather frequently. I think that's wrong. I don't think that someone's life is forfeit because they have Down syndrome.
So is Tim for state-supported Down syndrome healthcare for all children born? Is one of Tim's positions now that if a child has Down syndrome, the government should provide free healthcare to support that child if he believes it should be illegal for a mother to have an abortion if a child is found to have health issues that may impact the quality of life? Curious. I wonder what Tim's position is on that increase in healthcare.
But your argument is that they do.
No, it's not. That's a strong.
No. Your argument is that women have a right to terminate a baby for any reason at any point.
Yes, they should have the bodily autonomy to make that decision.
So what I'm saying is, in the circumstance of Down syndrome, I think it is wrong to terminate a baby's life at 9 months simply for having Down syndrome, but you would agree she is legally allowed to do so.
I think she should be legally allowed to do so. Whether or not I think that's a good idea is irrelevant.
Well, then there's the clarification. I think it should be illegal.
Okay.
I think
so there are limits to how much bodily autonomy women should have.
So yes, right.
So that's okay. So that's just.
I think it's really interesting that Tim's been really transparent here, that what he wants the law to do is to act as a moral compass for society, which is interesting. Personally, I don't think the role of the law should be to enforce moral norms. It should enforce sort of the basic minimums required for society to operate. And that might sound ironic, and that might sound counterintuitive from someone that also believes that, healthcare should be free, education should be free, there should be a universal basic income, we should be able to guarantee accommodation for everyone in Australia, America, wherever. Like, we've got enough productivity to do that, and so we should have programs that achieve that. Like, that might sound then counterintuitive, that I'm also saying that, well, the government shouldn't then be moralizing with the way it's putting laws in place. And I don't think there's a conflict there, because I think the issue comes down to, like, with, for example, the topic being abortion, that the moral aspect of whether abortions are right or wrong is a personal choice. And so individuals can make that choice, because the act of abortion, when, a mother is still going through pregnancy, is personal choice, right? It's bodily autonomy. It's about, like, do we restrict freedom? And if we restrict freedom, what are the outcomes that come with that? And abortion laws, like making it illegal, is a very significant impact on the freedom of, someone to act with autonomy with regards to their body. And if we look at what are the outcomes, like, well, typically if people have abortions, they often have children later in life when they're in a better circumstance, they're more secure, they're more financially stable, they've got a long-term career in place, they've got more stable housing solutions and stuff. And, like, we typically find that they then have better outcomes and the children have better outcomes. So it's like a net benefit. And so I think based on that, we shouldn't make it illegal, but we shouldn't also then make it illegal to not have it. Like, I know that sounds silly, but you get what I mean? Like, we should then let people make the moral decision for themselves instead of making it a legal thing. But Tim is, like, very consistently focused on making sure that he wants this to be a moral impetus, not just a ethical impetus. Because I think ethically it's very easily to be like, the ethical thing to do is to provide the option for the person carrying the pregnancy to make the determination how their body is to be used or not used by the fetus through the process. That's what ethical issues are. The moral issue is it right to terminate a life? At what point is it right? And, let the individual sort that out, and the law can just be like, what, abortion's legal. Easy. Because then we have the benefit of a society where the people who don't like abortions don't get them, and the people who think abortions are part of normal healthcare options can get them. Everyone should be happy. But it turns out one side of these fucking assholes will continually sit there and moralize over the issue and try to force their beliefs on the other side, which is insanely ironic coming from the fucking conservatives.
The pro-choice argument, because you're pro-abortion, right? Sure. Pro-choice traditionally in this country put limits at around like 15 to 16 weeks, meaning if the baby is dependent upon the body of the mother, then it is the body of the mother and she has final say. If the baby is viable, it can be removed in a process that ends the pregnancy but doesn't end the life of the baby. That's kind of like the compromise where the baby...
All right, I'm bored of this. Let's go to the next hump. I wonder if this is where the next topic starts.
Viable at 8 months? Is it viable?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is viable.
The baby.
You agree with forced birth at a point.
How?
How at 8 months? At 8 months, Tim Pool thinks forced birth is fucking cool and poggy.
Stop making up stupid bullshit.
No.
Tim Pool's literally whole thesis is like, if the child is viable, they should give birth. And God.
Hold on.
That's what this is.
Bro.
100% forced birth.
Nonsense statement, because I already said I agree with you. A woman should be able to end her pregnancy whenever she wants. A woman could end her pregnancy whenever she wants. Say it. Tim Pool said a woman can end her pregnancy whenever she wants.
Yeah,
I demand you
aborting
say
and
it.
giving birth are both ending a pregnancy.
Make up something fake. Tim Pool agrees with forced birth is a false statement. You're lying. I have already said I believe that women have a right to terminate their pregnancy up to a certain amount of time.
At 8 months is where you draw the line.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you just said that. If the baby is viable, that she shouldn't have the right to be able to terminate it.
To kill the baby.
Yes.
I said she can end the pregnancy whenever she wants.
And ending the pregnancy can be giving birth or aborting the
or a
baby.
C-section that keeps the baby.
That is such the biggest debate bro tactic, to use the phrase end the pregnancy, where in this context, it's clearly, infers an abortion. But then to be like, nah, bro, I said end the pregnancy. That could be either of the potential options. I mean, there's only two options. There's the pregnancy is ended or the child is given birth. So to say end the pregnancy and be like, well, bro, you could actually technically give birth and that ends the pregnancy. Fucking idiots.
So she has to be forced to give birth against her will in a C-section, but the baby is viable and they give it off.
So how do they remove the baby?
So hold on,
at 8
either way,
months?
the baby comes out of her. You're saying that
so you literally want forced birth. You literally want to force women to give birth against their will.
So can I just interject here?
You're saying they should use the tools to rip apart the body and pull that out. Whereas I'm saying they should just take the baby out.
No, I'm saying she should have the right to decide what happens to her body. That's it.
Okay, but either way, the child is coming out. You're making this argument about forced birth. Either way, what is in her body is going to be outside of it. The question is it okay to shove forceps into the skull of the small person who's inside of her and then tear them apart limb by limb to get them out? Or should we say, no, that's not an acceptable way of delivering a baby. You shouldn't kill that unborn child. How is that for either way it comes out of her body? Either way the child comes out of her body. It's not as if there's one scenario where the pregnancy...
Now, I don't know this for a fact, but my suspicion is between his... Let's face it, like the way he's describing the termination is abhorrent, right? And I have very strong suspicions that it is not accurate, but it is just inflammatory. But I also have a very strong suspicion that the stress put on her mother's body between the two different options that Seamus here has put forward are very different levels of stress, and those levels of stress can actually have some pretty significant complications or impacts on the mother. And so to present these as two equal options, like, well, dude, the baby's coming out either way, so why not just give birth to it properly, is, again, it shows how brain dead they are with the topic. I want to point out the irony of like these white men sitting around talking about an abortion. And I mean, I fit in that category. So whether that's a salient point, I'm not sure. But at least my point is to be like, hey, well, fuck, maybe you're oversimplifying things and not actually considering the ramifications of everything you're saying because you think it makes sense to you, but you've never had to think about giving birth. And I wonder how many of them have partners who have given birth.
Magically disappears and doesn't leave the body.
Let me add, forced birth is a nonsense politics statement.
But in your scenario, she's being forced to give birth against her will. Like she can't
She's
decide.
already pregnant, dude.
I know, but
we're not talking about forcing her to do anything.
Yeah, that's right. That bitch got pregnant. She already made her choice.
She's pregnant.
But then endorse that position.
I did.
Stick by it.
I know, I reject there's no such thing as forced birth. They're saying you can't kill that baby.
Let me tell you how fascinating this is.
Because she has the baby inside her.
Is so
yes, she does.
fervent about legalizing the killing of a baby at 9 months that I can sit here and say, I think women should be able to terminate their...
I love how defensive he gets when Lance reframes Tim's position in saying that you can't end a pregnancy and going, well, that's equals forced birth, right? It's like A equals A. Like you can't say I think abortion should be illegal after 8 months and then go, well, I don't believe in forced birth after 9 months. You can't after 8 months. Like the fact that they are the two sides of the same coin, but Tim rejects the framing because he understands it sounds completely obscene to like be all fucking Handmaid's Tale and be like, no, women must give birth. After they have reached this point that will be determined arbitrarily, they must then give birth to the child regardless of their bodily autonomy. He doesn't want to bite that bullet, despite the fact that's exactly what he's saying. And when it's framed to him accurately, he rejects it. And now he's got the gall to turn around and go say, well, the left just wants to legalize killing babies, as if that's what anyone has said in terms of being like, we should not make abortions illegal. Women should have the right to choose. That is not about killing babies. That is about women having the right to choose. There might be an outcome of fetuses being aborted. Again, even the killing babies part, ridiculous. Like it's not a baby until it's delivered, right? It's a fetus while it's inside.
their pregnancy whenever they want, but if the baby is viable, there's no reason to kill it.
She has to be forced to give it then. She has to be forced to give birth and then give the baby up, is what you're saying.
Give birth. Define.
Yes. Okay. So that is forced birth, right?
So
she can't decide to terminate it at 8 or 9 months.
Define give birth.
You just said at 8 months.
It's like talking to a child. Like it's like you how far? You're 20 minutes into this discussion and you're like, define give birth. Like if that's where Tim's at with his understanding of pregnancy, they probably should have established what it means to give birth at the start of this. And maybe it could have like saved some embarrassment from Tim to have to ask his interlocutor, shit, what does it mean to give birth? Mate, I've just K-holed out of this conversation and I just need you to confirm for me again what we're talking about. What is it to give birth? What does that mean? Sorry, I was just reading these sick memes that Elon Musk's been tweeting.
The baby is viable.
I didn't say 8 months. Define give birth. I'm trying to understand what you're saying by forced birth. What does birth mean?
You just said when she is at 8 or 9 months. Okay, so she's at 8 or 9.
I said viable.
Okay, so it's viable. The baby's viable. She should have to give birth to it in some capacity. C-section, whatever.
Define birth, and I can answer your question.
Birth, the removal of a child into the world from a mother's womb.
So how do they do that?
The woman pushes the baby out.
So then what would you call an abortion at 8 months? Is the woman pushing the baby out?
No, it's most likely a medical procedure done by a doctor.
And what is that medical procedure?
An abortion.
Like, what is that?
What is an abortion?
Yes, like what?
How is it done?
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure how it's done in 8 months. I know earlier on it's usually done with a series of tools.
He's trying to do the Socratic method, but he's an idiot. Like the Socratic method is like they're always like asking the next thing, like, and what does that mean, and how does that make you consider this, and okay, what's the ramifications of that? Like you're meant to be drilling down on someone's understanding to get to sort of their base beliefs and their base sort of understanding of a subject. But Tim is just asking circular questions about what is an abortion. And in his head, he thinks he's drilling down on Lance to get into Lance's gooey insides and understand what this leftist brain thinks about forced birth and abortions. But the problem is he's asking questions about the technical nature of the subject, not the philosophical nature of how Lance has come to his conclusions. And so that's why he's got caught in this loop of like, what's a birth? Well, birth is this. Okay, if birth is that, what's an abortion? Oh, it's when a baby's removed. Okay, but what is that? Well, it's an abortion. Because he's an idiot. He's a plain idiot. Oh my God, I'm glad I spent time at Tim Pool tonight.
I don't know how it's done at 8 or 9
Okay, so your moral argument is forced birth. I'm trying to understand what your position is. If you don't know how an abortion is done.
I told you. He's trying to understand his position, so he tried to do the Socratic method, and he just doesn't know enough about the subject to understand how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then are you in favor of forced birth?
Am I in favor of forced? No, I'm against forced birth.
But you think that women should have to expel the baby, right?
It's completely fine for me not to know the medical procedure of how abortion is done to stand up for the rights of a woman's body. I don't need to know how people perform abortions directly. I'm not going to lie here. I'm not going to pretend.
Removing a baby from a woman's body is birth.
Oh, so you're saying it doesn't count?
No.
It's birth of a different nature.
I don't think you have a definition, and I'm trying to understand what you mean by forced birth. But if you can't define the removal of the baby in a different way, I don't know what you're saying.
Birth, Tim, like the birth of a child.
So is a C-section a birth?
Sure. Yes, it is a form of extracting a living child that is viable to live in the real world.
That's how you define birth: extracting a living child to live in the real world.
No, I would define birth as someone giving birth. They are pushing a baby out of their body.
So I don't think women should be forced to do that, right?
You don't think women should be forced to push babies out of their body?
But the baby is in their body, so it's got to come out somehow.
So you're going to take it out with a C-section?
No, I don't know. Okay. But I'm trying to figure out what you mean by this.
So that would be forced birth. So she's forced to give and make a child a viable child.
Oh my God. I thought we were getting to the next subject. Maybe this is just all abortion for 30 minutes. Hooray. So is Tim trying to evade the fact that he is advocating that a woman must give birth to a child, regardless of the method of delivery, after 8 months? He is trying to avoid that accusation by defining birth narrowly as a traditional birth, and therefore, if that's not the only way they can extract a living child, because Lance has kind of gotten a bit tied up with some pretty awkward ways of describing the nature of giving birth. I personally, if I was in this, I would probably be like, hey, look, Tim, we both understand colloquially to give birth is the act of a child being removed or being okay, no, let's think. Look, simple terms are hard to define because it's not often you come across someone whose understanding is so low that you need to sort of go below the colloquial level to simplify even further to find a way to help them to understand. The act of giving birth is when a child is brought into the world from the parent through any number of means that result in a healthy baby, right? Not perfect, but again, like I said, when you're dealing with idiots, once you get below sort of a certain level of colloquial ease, like birth, define two, Tim. Define define a dog, right? Like it becomes like just ridiculous, right? This just go on.
Live in the real world.
I mean,
So when you're pregnant, the baby's going to come out of you at some point.
That's the
Either
point.
we rip
no
it
matter
apart
what
or
happens,
you give birth
the baby
naturally.
is coming out of the woman, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I
So
agree.
there's no being in favor of that or not. It happens. Period.
Yes.
Okay. So what's your point?
That's my point.
Am I in favor of a natural process by which a woman has to have a baby removed from her no matter what anyone says or does?
Your point is that at 8 or 9 months, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Tim.
You are wrong. Yes, I'll stop you right there because
You're fine.
because when you keep saying 8 or 9 months, that's not what I said over and over and over again.
Viability is after 6 months.
Viability is
Okay, that means that there's more than a 50% chance
you're
of
also
survival.
wrong. It's
There've been
not
babies
6
at, like,
months.
So
So
as soon
soon
as,
as
24
the baby
weeks.
is
It's not 6 months.
So as soon as the baby is
24 weeks.
viable, Tim, as soon as the baby is viable, then it's okay for the woman, even if she doesn't want to have it anymore for whatever reason, she should have to be forced to have it extracted from her and then live. Is that correct? Is that your position?
Well, it's not forcing the woman to have a baby live. If the
He doesn't answer. Like continually, Lance has been like, okay, let me clarify what I understand to you have just said. And Tim will only say, I didn't say that. He will not say, no, what I said is. Prove me wrong, Tim.
the baby's already alive. You see what I'm saying? Like you
Right,
can,
so you're okay.
Here's
So
a
we're
here's a
talking about
I got
semantics. This
I got
is
a
all
compromise for you.
semantics.
I got a compromise
Sure.
for you. We'll tell the mother we killed it, but we'll sneak it off and give it to someone else. Does that work for you?
No, because I still think she should have autonomy. She should have the right to do it if she wants to. Of course.
She should kill the baby after
she
it's already
shouldn't.
born?
I don't want her to kill a
This is why white men cop so much fucking shit online, right? Because Tim, and to be fair, Lance hasn't made this distinction clear either. The procedure of giving birth, whether it's C-section or whether it's naturally or however the baby is brought into this world safely and happily, those processes, those options for the child to be birthed have a different toll and a different level of stress on the mother than the process of an abortion. That is why abortions are medically necessary, because they reduce the level of stress on the mother's body. And when there is a risk, a medical risk, and a need for an abortion, that toll, that stress of giving birth is what they're trying to avoid. And Tim does not understand that that is the issue, because he is a fucking dumb man. And I can say that because I'm a fucking man. All right? It's not fucking gender politics. It is the fucking truth that he simply doesn't understand or does not acknowledge or account for the actual medical fact that there is no way to give birth, regardless of how you want to semantics your way out of biting the bullet on the fact that giving birth is different to getting an abortion, and reconcile that with his position. Because if he has to understand that giving birth carries different risks and different impacts, regardless of when it happens, then he has to understand that you can't just make this blanket rule with, well, if the baby's viable, then it's viable. It doesn't matter, does it?
baby. I want her to
why
have.
you keep saying it?
Because I want her to have the ability to choose. That's different, and that is a fundamental part of this.
The baby's out of her body, right?
Forcibly in your
No.
scenario.
Let's say
She-
24 weeks. The woman goes to the doctor and says, "I want this baby out of me." And the
What if she says, "I don't want to have this baby"?
I don't want to have this baby.
Okay.
Okay. And the doctor says, "I will remove it."
Okay.
Uh-oh, the baby's alive. What do we do?
So you forced her to give birth,
No. She said, "Doctor, I'd like an abortion." He says, "You got it." Step
and so
right up.
he's lying to her.
No. He does the abortion and it fails.
He's been watching It's Always Sunny in California because, like, Charlie Day was his mother got an abortion, but he survived. The abortion failed.
And
An abortion is terminating a pregnancy. So there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a trick abortion. You can't
No,
trick.
they're called failed abortions.
failed abortions where
Yes.
doctors like trick
right.
women into taking their babies out?
No. So when they perform the abortion, as Seamus explained, they stick metal tools into the brain, scramble it up, and rip its body parts apart, and then pull it out chunk by chunk.
Okay.
When the babies are smaller, sometimes they pull them out, but the babies don't die.
I wonder why the procedure is done that way. I wonder if it's to reduce the stress on the woman's body when they remove the unviable fetus. I wonder. Curious. God, this is a dark topic.
survive.
What was the anime?
Right? So my question is, in the instance of a failed abortion, what should be done?
A failed abortion being that the child is living, it's
Yes.
outside of the mother.
Yeah.
At that point, you cannot kill that child. That would be murder.
Oh, okay.
Agreed on that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So then,
He thinks
Murder.
oh, okay.
Agreed on that point.
Right.
Look how smug he is. It's like, no shit. No one in the world has ever thought that you can get an abortion after birth. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So then, where does the mother's choice come in to kill?
Before that procedure takes place.
So
She has a choice to choose what she wants to have done with her body. If she goes to a doctor and the doctor's like, I'm going to perform an abortion, which the assumption would be that I'm about to terminate the child, but then he just secretly sneaks the child out of there, that's not performing an abortion. You're just being deceptive.
Yeah, and the doctor should go to prison if they did something like that, in my opinion.
I think you go to
absolutely.
prison if you should go to prison if you performed an abortion.
Oh, man. Jeez.
Yeah.
I heard
Yeah.
that. Not
Opposite
surprised.
perspective.
So there's also something that none of us.
Yeah, the 26 weeks. This guy here, when he chucked out that number, he did say that it was like 50% viable likelihood of 50% likelihood of viability. Which, whether that's right or wrong, like that's still not really viable. Like I don't think you'd say, hey, my car works 50% of the time. It's a viable option for me to get to work. So I think they're stretching the interpretation of what a viable baby would be. But hey, that's fine. It's all semantics. It's all word games here. None of this has got any correlation with real life implications for what a law on abortion would actually lead to in the world.
No, because I don't think any of us are medical doctors. The difference on the physiology of the
Someone said it.
female body giving a 9-month abortion, having that happen, or the actual birthing process, whether by C-section or natural birth, it might have vastly different consequences on the female body.
Holy shit. Someone said it. Someone actually said it. Let's see how this resolves itself.
So that's something to take into
oh,
account.
so wait. Remember the Born Alive Act?
Yes.
That was a Republican position, wasn't it? What was that?
Yeah, so there have been a couple of different Born Alive acts in different years, but what they basically say is that if the abortion fails, it is not legal to kill the child.
I bet that's a law that was never needed because there was never anyone that killed a child after a failed abortion. If you define failed abortion as we did the abortion and the baby came out alive.
Wasn't that Republicans were trying to pass a law?
Republicans were trying to pass that. That was one of the only things Obama voted on in the Senate. He voted against it.
Yeah. Tim's been talking about the 26 weeks because when the other guy said it and then added it's a 50% viability, Tim's just run with the 26 weeks is viable. So let's use that.
Obama voted against it. But you would be in favor of that.
In favor of what?
The Born Alive Act.
I'm not completely familiar with it, so I have to read
if
up
an
on it
infant
first.
is born alive after an attempted abortion, it has the same protection of law and degree as a newborn.
Yeah, I would be okay with that because at that point it's a human. If you're killing a person that is alive outside of a womb, then that's murder, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Can I ask you,
that's
this is
good.
not a gotcha.
We agree on that. That's great.
I bet you Seamus is about to not say a gotcha. I bet he's about to say something that makes it completely obvious that he's got no idea what he's fucking talking about. Because he's about to completely ignore the fact that a failed abortion where a living child has been results is already a newborn. Newborns, it's already illegal to kill a newborn. You don't need a law to make it illegal to kill a newborn that is a result of an abortion because it's already illegal to do it. This is exactly what I was talking about. You don't make laws for things that don't need laws.
I want to ask in good faith. So,
Yeah, of course.
you believe that the moment after
Red
the child
flag.
is outside of the birth canal, that they are now endowed with human rights.
Yes.
However, when they are inside of the mother, literally anything you do to them is acceptable because they're inside of the mother.
Oh, no, I don't think anything is acceptable, but I think the mother should still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside of her body.
Hold on.
Not
What
her.
about meth?
Like,
They're not serious people. They are not serious people. What about meth?
should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if
Isn't meth illegal? Right? Like meth's illegal, right? Like it's not been legalized while I wasn't paying attention in America, right? Meth is illegal, right? Tim's question at the moment is, should a mother be allowed to do methamphetamines? Which is illegal, right?
if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like I don't know what the name of the service is in the United States.
Child services?
I guess
Child
DCFS
services?
would be.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's her body though.
Yeah, it's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the big deal?
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child.
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, and I see where we're going.
I don't understand what you're saying. It's her body.
It's her
if
body.
She wants to do meth. What's the problem?
Well, first off, doing meth is illegal, period. Doesn't matter if you're doing it with a child or without a child.
Not in Oregon.
Methyl and MDMA. It's a
Maybe
type
it's
of meth.
alcohol.
Wait,
then.
sorry, what?
Not crystal meth.
Crystal meth
There's
is legal in
different kinds
Oregon?
of-
No, it's
not crystal.
Hold on a second.
MDMA is a kind of meth. Methyl and methamphetamine is
Yeah.
ecstasy. That's a kind of meth. There's also crystal meth, which is not legal. MDMA is legal in some places for therapy sessions. I don't know if it's legal for
Yes,
very
it is.
pregnant women.
Okay, it is.
Is it for pregnant women? I
Oregon
don't know.
decriminalized possession in 2021.
Right.
But I don't know if
But
that's...
I'm just okay, dude. So like,
decriminalizing possession is different than legalizing crystal meth.
Yes. Oh my god.
You know those two things are completely different, right?
Well, it's a question of whether you can press charges.
Hold on.
Yeah.
What?
So you
Does he not know the difference between decriminalizing possession and like still drugs being illegal?
criminalize a small amount of drugs, that means if you're caught with that drugs by a cop, that means if you're arrested, you cannot be charged for 1 gram, 2 grams, whatever
that's
that
what
is.
legalizing is.
No, this is decriminalization, not legalization. We never said
There's no such thing.
legalization.
Legalization is a semantic term. It doesn't mean anything.
Yes, it means
Why did I listen to any of this? If this is the level Tim pulls on, that he doesn't understand the difference between decriminalization and legalization. Oh, Jesus.
it means that there's no longer a prohibition on that product.
Okay, so if a woman does meth, she's legally allowed to have it, right?
Is she legally allowed to do it or possess it?
I mean, what's the difference?
Two very different things. You can be legally allowed to possess drugs and not be legally allowed to take drugs, for example.
Alcohol.
So if she does alcohol.
Can a woman chug a fifth of vodka while pregnant?
Yeah, she can legally.
But do you think she has a right to do so?
I think she has a right to do. Yes, she has a right to do it. I don't agree with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And heroin?
It's illegal.
I don't think heroin's illegal. I think heroin actually was legalized. I think it's controlled, but I think that one specifically was.
Wait, what drugs are legal in America now? I thought they just legalized fucking weed. Like, I didn't realize they were going like all fucking balls to the wall with MDMA and heroin and shit. Like, is Tim actually just thinking of like decriminalization? Like, hey, we're not going to like systemically oppress groups of people that take these specific drugs?
Was oxycodone and other drugs. So
Oxy.
She has a right to do it, whether or not I agree with her doing it.
He's using street names and that, oh god. Yeah, so the decriminalized part is the white person version of these drugs. That's what's been decriminalized.
That's completely different. I don't agree with a woman who would have an elective abortion at 9 months. I think that is like, why the fuck would you have done that? But I think she has the right to do it, right?
But do you think it's ethical that she, like...
I don't think it's
legal
ethical. No, of course not.
Because some things are made legal that are unethical, in my opinion.
True.
And should those be made illegal?
I mean, that's a very broad question, right?
no,
You're talking about a lot
I'm
of
sorry.
different things.
Personal use of methamphetamine is allowed. It's a civil citation, like a traffic ticket, not a criminal citation.
So it's still against the law. It's just a misdemeanor.
Allowed maybe is hyperbolic. It is
You
a civil
fucking idiot.
citation to be caught using methamphetamine in Oregon. You get a ticket for it, but no crime.
So I just looked up the Born Alive Act, by the way. It says this bill is deliberately misleading and offensive to pregnant people and doctors and nurses who provide their care. It is another attempt by anti-abortion politicians to spread misinformation as a means to get...
See, they've got laptops, and Seamus never looked up to check the stats on his like people are having abortions for fun claim.
a warped political end to ban safe and legal abortion. It's an entry point to try and make abortion illegal.
Where did you read this?
Okay, well,
and what
no,
source is this
hold on,
from?
no. I don't care. I mean, who cares about the Born Alive Act?
Tim and Seamus cared about it not too long ago. They brought it up to make their point. I have mostly consumed Timcast through other people responding to them, and often from like clips that they would sort of grab and stuff. And not that I didn't believe that those clips had the necessary context to come to a accurate and rational determination of how serious Tim Pool is as a person, but sitting here and watching a few of his videos and watching through this whole episode here, I am gobsmacked at how stupid Tim Pool actually is. It is genuinely amazing to me that we have had him not understand what birth is, and think he was doing the Socratic method by getting someone to define what birth means as opposed to actually interrogate their ideas and their position. We have had him bring up a act, the Born Alive Act or whatever it is, or whatever they were just talking about, as if it was a point that was valid. And then when it is looked into by Lance, he has gone, I don't care, I'm not talking about that. He has not understood the framing of being forced to give birth is the same as saying that after a fetus is viable, a woman should not be allowed to get an abortion. He has claimed that meth was legalized in a state when it was only decriminalized and was still a citation, a fucking, like, still something that you're going to be punished by the government for. And yet somehow he has fans. There was a video in the search results when I was looking for this that was like Tim Pool demolishes Lance from the Surfs. And I'm kind of fascinated how the framing of this conversation must have been presented for them to have that opinion. I mean, basically, they probably just act like Seamus, right?
The question was, if an abortion happens but the baby survives, can you kill it? And Lance already said no. So we're done with that.
So he would, yeah, for sure.
So any other political arguments, anyone left, right, or otherwise trying to change that? No, it's irrelevant. Once the baby's born, it's a... No one in the history of ever, apart from absolute psychopaths, has ever been like, right, here's an important political question. After a baby is born, particularly if it was a failed abortion and the baby was born, we need to sit down and we need to work through, can we kill the baby? All right, we need to have a serious discussion, pros and cons. Let's go. Let's figure this. No, that conversation's never happened. And he's acting like, oh, well, like, the baby.
So it has the same rights as every other human at that point, right? It's an American.
This is an interesting. I think this falls in line with the idea of anarcho-tyranny that we were talking about. My view of the modern left is that their positions are nothing but chaos. There's no logical path.
Yes. The absolute chaos of people should have a home, people should have healthcare, people should have education, people should be able to afford food, people should be able to have safety and stability in their lives so that they can find fulfillment in the way that they decide to interact with their work and their labor. They should have the right to decide a lot more of the choices and decisions that happen in the workplace, and that maybe if democracy is good for a country, democracy is good for the workplace. That is absolute chaos. That is definitely not order. That is definitely not stability. That is definitely not ordering society in a way that means that everyone has more predictable pathways to success, fulfillment, and happiness. That is just chaos. Tim Pool, you have accurately described the left by saying chaos. Now let's see what he actually
pathway towards preserving life, improving people's lives. It seems to be only, it's like yin yang. Right? There's one side that's talking about long-term planning, logical thinking, and improving the world, and one side that takes the inverse position no matter what. For instance, 25 people push in front of a subway, nobody bats an eye. Three guys try to subdue a man, and now they want prison. That's like a weird inversion of what the law is supposed to do. The law should stop the people who are pushing people on the trains and protect the people on the train who are being victimized. But the left's position is the inverse of it, right?
Are you asking me for like
it's
affirmation of that? Because if you ask me,
no, I'm just saying like that's my view.
So when you say the left's idea,
I like that. Is that, well, that's my view. I wasn't asking you to respond to that. I know I've invited you here to have this discussion, but I wasn't framing that for your response. I just wanted to talk. I just like the sound of my own voice.
all chaos. I mean, if you really wanted to boil down what the left is fighting for, especially myself, it's expanding freedom. I believe in freedom. I love freedom. I'm sure everyone here likes freedom too, right? You're all about freedom.
You got how do you define freedom exactly?
So for me, I believe in a democratic process where we don't have tyrants, we don't have dictators, we don't have kings or queens. We have the ability as a democracy to be able to vote for who we work for, or sorry, who our leaders are, right? Like we want to be able to vote for our president, our prime minister. I believe in that fundamentally. But my other thing is I want to expand that freedom into the workplace, because we spend about 8 hours a day every single day in our works, our jobs. I want to expand freedom there. So people who work at their jobs for 8 hours a day have the ability to vote for things in their lives, better healthcare, better working conditions, whether or not their boss is corrupt and stealing from all of them. I want to expand that. I want to expand freedom into other parts of life. That's a fundamental belief for me.
So what do you mean by stealing from them?
Look at how short the rest of this video is. So at 27 minutes. Yeah, so 27 minutes, Lance starts talking about leftist ideals in democratizing the workplace and freedom. And we've got 3 minutes left of this video. Maybe they go into more detail in another video, which would be interesting to look at. Maybe
stealing
in the
wages,
future.
for example.
Like actually shorting someone's check and
so the largest form of theft in America right now is wage theft. If you look,
I had it happen to me. I sued. I went to the National
Good for
Labor
you.
Board and we won.
How does it happen?
as you should. So there's a ton of
Not
ways.
paying overtime.
Not paying overtime. Bosses simply just garnishing checks or garnishing wages, stealing tips, or thinking that tips are justification to pay them lower salaries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All of it bullshit. And when you look at theft, every single you look at the stats, right? Cars being stolen, jewelry, all that. Wage theft blows everything out. Like they're not even comparable. It's one down here, and then it's like the other one's fucking all the way up there.
I got a story for you. So I worked at a company. I get a paycheck. I'm good at math and stuff. And so I look at it and I'm like, hey, there's a problem with my paycheck. And they go, no, it's good. I'm like, no, it isn't. There's a problem with my paycheck. Fix it. And I very quickly was like $67 missing. I want it fixed. I want it fixed now. And they went, give us a few minutes. Came back 15 minutes later, handed me a check. I looked at it and said, are you joking? And they were like, huh? And I was like, this is wrong. I'm not an idiot. Fix my paycheck. Went to a couple other employees. I said, let me see your paychecks. I looked and I went, come with me. Walked right to the National Labor Board in Chicago and said, this is what they did. They took our statements. We went to the company and we told them we were going to form a union because of what they had done. They fired us on
Chaos.
the spot for doing it. We sued them. And then I'll give you air quotes in saying we won. What actually happened was after 6 months of being out of work, they said you can get retro pay, which will be $7,000 each, or we can go to fight and then they'll give you your job back. And I'm like, if they give us our job back, they're going to retaliate against us. No, that's illegal. And I was like, oh, come on. So we won the fight, but it really means they were able to fire us to stop us from forming a union.
So what would be a good...
Sorry, did Tim just describe the origin story of like some socialist hero if they had the guts to actually fight their workplace? Like he described like the reason why Lance is advocating for freedom in the workplace while democratizing the workplace is important. Like Tim just gave a perfect story why what Lance is saying is good, valuable, just, and the correct option, the correct opinion to have.
So, better example of expanding. Sorry, Seamus. You can say something.
No. I just want to make the point. I haven't seen
Don't do it. You're about to embarrass yourself.
the stats on wage theft
But he's going to push through and tell us he doesn't think it's that bad.
causing more in losses than all other forms of theft combined. I'll just have to take your word for that, and I'm willing to grant that for the sake of
I think that's
this discussion.
true.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm willing to grant it if that is the case, and at the very least, for the sake of argument. I certainly don't agree in involuntarily democratizing all workplaces. That's probably a much longer, interesting economic discussion. Happy to engage in it with you guys too. And I suspect we would all have different views on it. I don't know if you want to go to other issues or if you want to talk about that. Because I would like to talk about that.
Thanks for watching this clip.
Crazy. Tim, like, barely even knows the problem by the sounds of it. Like, it is fucking Like, that was amazing. Like, I think because most of the time when I see Tim Pool, when like he pops up on Twitter with these little clips and stuff, like they're just these short little sections that like he doesn't have enough time to cook himself to sort of show how little he knows. Whereas like you watch through one entire discussion and like he just flip flops. He focuses on semantics. He fucks up like, you know, basic inquiry in terms of things like the Socratic method. He doesn't understand the entire context of us. Like, you know, when it comes to giving birth and healthcare and pregnancy, he doesn't understand the implications of late month abortions versus giving birth. Like he thinks the two things are equal and should be treated as equal viable options. And that's not the case. And the moment the guy with the long hair and the glasses actually was like, hey, just to clarify, the toll on a woman's body between giving birth at 9 months and an abortion at 9 months is actually quite significantly different. They immediately discarded that and continued on whatever other fucking discussion they were talking about. And they didn't engage with that at all. It was, it was quite a thing. God damn, it's 1:15. I need to go to bed. So that was the late term abortions. The next video is about Bud Light. Because of the trans Dylan Mulvaney. Then after that, it's Democrats double down on calling violent subway attacker the victim. Grand jury could indict New York Marine in death of violent homeless man. Oh, yeah. The guy that executed a guy on the subway. He might face justice. Holy shit. Vice Media is selling to Soros. Founder of KISS slams child trans surgeries, says acceptance not normalized. Yes, because, you know, someone from like 70s hair metal band is definitely a good source for, you know, who we should take from that. New York City mother who fled BLM terrorists avoids 6 years in prison. Whole Foods in San Fran made over 560 police reports. Jazz Jennings shows proof of moral corruption. Mother is abusing Jazz. Weird. Why is there not the discussion they had on democratizing the workplace? That is very curious. I'll have to see if I can find that. Anyway, it's late. I'm tired. I need to put some clothes in the wash because I'm going somewhere tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out, Mick. Thanks for everyone else that dropped by. And yeah, let's see if we can be slightly normal. Sorry for the angle. I know that happened during the course of the stream. My webcam, the 3/4 inch thread broke, and so it's using Velcro wall picture hooks, and it's a pain in the ass at the moment. And I'm loath to spend $220 to get a new camera when the only thing that's wrong with it is the thread, but then I don't know how to fix it better than this. So anyway, peace out.